93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I do find it very fitting that on this glorious day of love, the man that I have spent easily the most one-on-one time with outside of anybody not named my wife in the last month is looking across me into my eyes right now in studio. Greg Rakestraw, happy Valentine's Day.
Same to you. And if you start looking at my ugly mush to start the day, it can only get better from here. So happy Valentine's Day to you and all of our listeners out there. I'm not sure I love being up this early, but I do love the scarcity of cars parked in the garage. I nearly parked at a Jeff Smullian level to get into the building today. I did. I assumed that you would be here first, and clearly you were not since you know exactly where I parked.
Yes, I saw Rake's car. I was like, look at that. He is prompt and no surprise whatsoever there. A very happy Valentine's Day to all of our listeners, as Rake said. Mark Dykton, happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you, sir.
To you as well. Will we get some love theme here on the re-entries today?
I wouldn't be doing my job if we didn't.
I'm assuming you start with the Love Boat as far as the opening theme of the show today.
Little wake-up call there. Wake up me, right? From Avicii there. From Mark Dykton. Good Friday morning to everybody out there. Thank you for closing out the week with us. Not a lot from appointment television last night. You will get that tonight. You will get Indiana back at home inside of Assembly Hall. They will take on UCLA and just what we know is just a old Big Ten rivalry like no other. And we'll have a couple of guests to get you to 10 o'clock. Jeremiah Johnson going to join us coming up at 8:30. And Doug Boles, who's added quite the title to the business card here this week. He will join us coming up at 9.
By the way, in case Indiana and UCLA does not do anything for you from a television standpoint tonight, I may offer an alternative. Hamilton Southeastern and Carmel at 7:30.
Now that's
my
a rivalry.
Indy TV 23. No love lost between those two right there.
Is that my Fighting John Ashworth?
That is the Fighting John Ashworth. This is yet another IUPUI matchup, and I reference the old name, not the current name, but since the two coaches both played for IUPUIs, and John Ashworth and Ryan Osborne, yes.
Now, we are into girls basketball regionals.
Correct, that is tomorrow.
So last weekend, we would have had a quiet Friday night, boys hoops-wise. Obviously,
Correct.
The girls would have controlled Friday nights here. But tonight will be more of an active, I assume, boys Friday night. And then we've got to be close to the pairing show, are we not?
So the boys pairing show is next Sunday at 6 o'clock. So we are down to 2 weeks. Most teams have somewhere between 3 and 5 games left. Hamilton Southeastern is kind of the exception after tonight. They have 2 more games left of their season, and that is it. But we have 2 more weeks of the boys basketball regular season, or we have 7 weekends of postseason basketball, if you want to look at it that way. Girls regional down to 64 teams as of tomorrow, and then pairing show for the boys next Sunday. State championship for the girls on March 1st. Boys tournament starts 3 days later.
I know that your weekend agenda doesn't stop tonight. What's on the docket tomorrow?
So Roncalli and Danville, from a girls regional standpoint, I will make my debut at Southmont High School tomorrow to call that one. A rare Saturday night off because I have a regional site that is an afternoon site. Pair of pairing shows on Sunday for the IHSAA. The girls' semi-state. Remember, we only draw through the regional round of the tournament now. So we have a semi-state draw for both the boys and the girls. So the girls' one is at 2 o'clock. And then I have the wrestling state finals pairing show because the boys' wrestling semi-states are tomorrow. And I'll be at Gamebridge next Saturday night for that. So a pairing show doubleheader for me on Sunday afternoon.
You know, it's funny you mentioned back at Gamebridge for the wrestling. Obviously, this time last year, we
Correct.
were waking up on this Friday morning to what was certainly not a great weather day.
And our only snowstorm of the entire season happened on All-Star Weekend.
Oh, man, in our city. Was it today, Mark, that we had Adam Silver on? Was it
Yep.
Friday of All-Star Weekend?
Yeah.
And, of course, the wrestling state finals are down in Evansville.
Correct.
Last year.
The IHSA calendar is for those that follow, and those would be me at this hour that would follow that. The IHSA calendar has moved back a week this year. So, in other words, which is why if the All-Star game could have been here this year, the wrestling state finals would have taken place at Gamebridge. But, again, last year on the same weekend. And normally they're on the same weekend. Just kind of an anomaly this year.
Were we doing the show at the convention center? I'm trying to think of where we were. Were we on that Friday?
I think
Because we were
you
at that
did
fan fest,
leading
weren't
up
we?
to Friday, and then we had Adam Silver here, and you guys were in studio. But I think you guys did that because you did like the Sprite. You did the convention center like Sprite shooting contest.
Right.
all that stuff.
So again, All-Star Weekend, Pascal Siakam, the lone pacer in any of the events. Last year they obviously had a ton, rising stars-wise. You saw last year at this time, Benedict Mather and Jaden Ivey getting into it on the Friday night. They certainly were represented Saturday night in the skills competitions, but it'll just be Pascal Siakam out in San Francisco for that. And mainly it's just kind of a busy home college hoops weekend. As we mentioned, IU UCLA tonight at 8 o'clock. Tomorrow, afternoon tips from Mackey and Hinkle. Was the zone a one-game mirage, or do we believe that they have found something in the zone, Mike Woodson's bunch?
If you are going to play that double post system, in theory, you have the old Frank Vogel. All right, the three of you guys put your arms together, and you can basically go from sideline to sideline. There is something there. I like the fact that there was some level of coaching innovation, something different. Obviously, now other teams will have more of a game plan for it and a chance to prepare for it. But I'm a big fan of the if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if the zone works for you on Tuesday, trot it out again tonight, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, and Michigan State was the worst three-point shooting team in the Big Ten. So obviously that aids your ability in that. I mean, if they're going to go big, to your point, Rake, I mean, what's that, 6'8", and whatever Balo is, I mean, that's pretty darn big. At the bottom of that zone. So be curious that. And honestly, I'm just kind of looking forward to tonight for, certainly how Indiana responds to easily their most marquee moment they've had probably in the last 2 years. But I haven't watched one lick of UCLA. I know nothing. I
think you and most of Western civilization. I know Mick Cronin is their head coach.
And he's on the short list?
I think he is. The way I have broken it down in other conversations, Tier 1 is Brad Stevens. Tier 2 is Dusty May. Tier 3 is then like 10 dudes, and he would be probably of that group.
Okay.
And clearly he has shown some motivation to want to get out of Los Angeles and head back this way potentially.
Yeah, we got into a little bit of this debate yesterday. Maybe we get into it today. Like, these obviously are two richly historic college basketball programs. But to me, they are very different jobs. Like, I think Indiana is a far better job than UCLA, given the current state of college athletics and how each of these programs and their fan bases have responded to it.
When you have 5 to 6 weeks in this business to discuss a job opening, obviously, as you guys well know, churning up Colts conversation in February, March, April, May, etc., you have to find creative ways to talk about things. And one of, not this program, but social media, blog posts, talk radio in general, one of the quick conversations or one of the easy conversations to have is the Indiana job still a great job? And I think the answer to this question is different now in the unabashed capital era of college sports. The answer is yes, this is a great job because Indiana is going to spend as a top 5, as a top 10 program. In the recent history, is Indiana a top 5 or top 10 program? Absolutely not. But they are going to spend that way. And so hence, it makes Indiana a very attractive opening for any head coach.
That'll be Robbie Hummel, Jason Benetti on the call tonight, 8 o'clock Fox. Indiana slight underdog, 1.5-point underdog. Again, UCLA they've had a good season, but they've yet to win in the Eastern time zone. So this is part of the whole...
Which is now a much bigger deal than it used to be for that program.
Sure,
yes.
This is part of the whole Big Ten expansion and how the West Coast teams fare. And they lost to Illinois earlier in the week. So they've been, for what it's worth, in kind of this general Midwest area for quite a few days now.
And I'm sure they are thrilled with the weather conditions they have encountered.
Gotta love it. Yeah, 15 degrees, I think it was, on the old commute in. Purdue, Wisconsin tomorrow, Butler and Providence from Hinkle. We'll get to little Pacers, little Colts, as I mentioned. Jeremiah Johnson going to join us here. The NBA now closed up shop here for All-Star Weekend. Last night, a handful of games. The Pacers will be back in action coming up Thursday. It'll be Zach Edey's lone appearance inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse, outside of a preseason game. It'll be the Grizzlies and the Pacers coming up on Thursday. And we'll get to a little Colts conversation as well. We're about 10 days out, Rake, from yet another iteration of the NFL Combine here in Indy.
What is the coverage plan for this radio show?
I want to say Tuesday through Friday. I think we're still trying to finalize that. That would be a week from Tuesday.
Yeah.
Through Friday. I believe NFL head coaches and GMs will start to meet the media on Tuesday at the convention center, and then I think prospects will begin on Wednesday. So in years past, we have kind of rotated the Chris Ballard, Shane Steichens across our shows.
Sure.
So I don't know exactly what the draw is yet on who will get who, but hopefully we'll continue that, and it is yet another year. I think I got an email yesterday. I want to say the economic impact for the combine is like a little over $9 million.
Yeah.
It's
one of those things that I'm like, hey, if I don't have to cover it, I'm cool with that. But I want that thing in Indianapolis every year because I know what it does for the downtown hotels. I know what it does in terms of catchphrases in our business, earned media for the city of Indianapolis, and I know what it does for radio programs such as this one.
When I think of love, I just want to be at Mama Carolla's tonight, Rick.
I think I have done a Valentine's Day at Mama Carolla's. It's quite the fine establishment. What are the plans for you and the lovely Mrs. Bowen?
You know, it's funny. Mark brought this up earlier in the week. You know, are you a big Valentine's Day guy? And we are not. Now, our anniversary is Sunday. So you can kind of go a little two birds with one stone. I will be doing the show next week remote from Florida on Tuesday and Wednesday. We go with my parents to Anna Maria Island. Are you familiar with that at all?
To some degree.
So you fly into like Tampa, Sarasota area. Honestly, they got hit pretty hard by the hurricane here late last year. And then it's about a 30 to 40-minute drive just kind of due west. So we are right up against the Gulf, which seems to be top of mind for a lot of people here right now. So we'll be out there. Looking forward to it very much. So, yeah, we'll celebrate with a dinner down there.
So let me ask you, first of all, how many years of wedded bliss for you and the missus?
6 on Sunday.
Okay. Why a mid-February wedding?
It's a good question. Her older brother got married in late January, so I think like that kind of opened her eyes to like, oh, it's not, this is a fine time of year to do it, and I was good with it. Fittingly, we had it on like this weekend, so it was kind of one of these quieter sport calendar weekends, which worked out.
Which is always the key to any sort of marriage planning is just how busy the sports calendar is.
Right. Selfishly for my job, it was nice.
You at least have a paycheck involved with it, but can't miss the Packers game.
Right,
okay,
exactly. Yeah. Pacers game number 51.
That's
you got to make sure it doesn't pop up on the wedding schedule.
Did you say the wedding vows properly? I think so. Did the Pacers cover? Absolutely. Priorities. Let's go.
Honestly, I found that, and maybe this is just people just trying to be nice to you, I found that a lot of people looked forward to the mid-February wedding or like the late winter wedding because they're just so damn ready to get out of their house. Like I know Tony East is getting married this weekend, for example, and his schedule.
Again, that is planning for him. When you work in the business, that's a little bit different.
And I said this to Tony. I'm like, dude, they're going to have people that like, especially Tony's 8. Tony's a little bit younger than I. I guess I was, 29 when I got married. At that point of your life, you're having a lot of weddings.
Yes.
A lot of your friends are still getting married, et cetera, et cetera. Well, when you get into the summer months or summer weeks, it's like we got 3 and 4 weeks right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're, not to say you're dreading attending a wedding, but you maybe are. So we found it to be great, and the weather was great. It was like a 50-degree, one of those, kind of random winter days. So you
planned it through the Indiana Sports Corp. You had a winter event, and the temperature.
It was Super Bowl weather, not NBA All-Star Weekend weather.
Exactly. Very nice. In a word to your future self, at some point in time, you get past the wedding age, then you get to the divorce age, then you're scared about what the next age is going to be. The next social gathering. There's usually a hole that is dug at the end of the get-together. So just so you know what you're looking forward to, KB.
Any Valentine's Day plans for you outside of?
Well, the Valentine's Day plans have changed because the missus was actually set to fly out of town for like 4 days as of tonight, and not exactly, with me going out to see some friends in Colorado. For a couple of different reasons, those plans changed. So we actually get to go out and actually have a Valentine's Day date tomorrow night I have a night off. So, and again,
care to reveal the establishment? Or
it hasn't been decided yet.
Okay.
It is a game time decision at this point. But sitter has been procured. Sitter has been shifted to different hours because the sitter was going to be, all right, when can you watch Jack so I can actually go out and make a buck? Now it is, hey, I want to make sure you get your hours because you had booked X amount of hours. And now Amy and I can go out and have a good time. So.
And Mark Dykton, I'm spacing a little bit. Any plans?
Not yet. I told Greg earlier after the show today, I'm kind of being a psychopath and going to my daughter's school, and I'm doing not one but 2 Valentine's Day parties. I'm volunteering.
That's called being
at.
a good dad, is what that's
I was
called.
going to say, psychopath in school, probably not the 2 words you want to hear.
From like 11 to about 3:30, I will be booked up there. That's the rest of my day. And then I don't know what we're doing. Probably maybe some dinner. No babysitter in our future, though. So
Not every weekend can be Royal Rumble weekend
No.
in the
God,
Dykton
don't.
household.
Don't bring me down.
Not at all. Yeet.
Yeet. Yeah, that's right. Yeet.
Rake, that's what I was yelling. You are a wrestling guy, right? Right, Rake?
I am probably more of a classic wrestling guy than I am now, but I know enough to be dangerous and at least carry the conversation.
The handwriting was very good at the Bowen household in writing out the Valentines last night for their fellow schoolmates. So I was pleased on that. That's what our Thursday night pretty much was at the Bowen household. I also watched a great documentary on Black Hawk Down.
Really?
Is that good? I saw
Yeah,
the trailer for that.
I mean, jarring, but very good. I know we're kind of getting into I gotta know.
We are.
What are
You should have
what are
had
you
to mention
watching
that
lately?
yesterday.
Yeah, but a buddy of mine texted me and was like, "Yeah, you should watch it." And sure enough, it was.
That may be a
Very
sign that it is a slow sports weekend.
Yes, quiet
That
Thursday
in the opening
nights.
segment of the show, you referenced, there was this great documentary about a military accident from 20, 25 years
Well, I
ago.
mean, literally, Brendan King yesterday is trying to sell me on USA Finland, which it looked like we rolled last night, 6-1.
4 nations face-off, buddy.
That's what the appointment television was last night. Tonight, you've got it, though. Indiana, UCLA, that'll be on our sister station, WIBC. Coverage will begin 7 o'clock. It is an 8 o'clock tip for that one. We'll chat about that. I'll throw it at Rake. I do it, typically when he joins us on Fridays. How many NCAA tournament teams does he see right now from the state as we are about a month out from Selection Sunday? Love is in the air. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone out there. I'm Kevin Bowen. He's Greg Rakestraw, Mark Dykton. We've got you till 10 a.m. Thanks for spending this Friday morning with us right here on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Corteva Coliseum, March 10th and 11th.
Well, it's a very fitting re-entry as we have the voice of one of the Horizon League teams with us here on this Friday morning. That would be the one and only Greg Rakestraw. I'm Kevin Bowen. Let's begin a morning check down right tonight in Bloomington. It's Indiana and UCLA. 8 o'clock tip there for Mike Woodson and Mick Cronin. Indiana slight underdog, 1.5 points on this. Again, we talked about it in the opening segment. UCLA has yet to win a game here in the Eastern time zone, and we will see if the Jim Boeheim zone all of a sudden has a second life here coming up tonight.
What this is, though, is a chance for Indiana to get a quality win. I hate, giving a fix to addicts on this, but after the Michigan State game, there actually is a path to the NCAA tournament for the Indiana Hoosiers. Now, they have shown nothing in terms of the way of consistency and actually backing up good wins and quality moments. And part of the issue for Indiana is, too, they don't have as many games left having the bye coming up, and they don't have the most quality opponents that are left on their schedule. But the other thing that Indiana has seemingly avoided doing is taking bad losses. You know how many losses they have to Quad 2, Quad 3, and Quad 4 teams, Mr. Bowen? A Blutarski 0.0 level of those. The problem is they're 3-10 in games against Quad 1 teams. By the way, UCLA comes in at number 25 in the net ranking. So it would be another really good win for Indiana. The path is there. Do I think they'll take advantage of it? No. But the path is there for the Hoosiers.
Well, and the path is not always there for bubble teams. Like, it's a great scenario for Indiana. You're going to get a Quad 1 home opportunity tonight, and then again a week from Sunday against Purdue. I mean,
correct.
You live in a mid-major world. There are a lot of mid-major teams that would be on all knees to somehow get a Quad 2 opportunity this time of year.
Right.
So that is there for the Hoosiers. Again, tonight, 8 o'clock, that is on Fox. Tomorrow afternoon, we'll get a little double dip here for afternoon hoops from a local standpoint. Purdue, Wisconsin, that is on CBS at 1. Final home game for a couple weeks here for the Boilers. Again, much needed to control home court. They are at Michigan State on Tuesday, so this is probably the toughest stretch of the season for Purdue from a Big Ten standpoint. And then up at Hinkle, 2 o'clock, it is Butler and Georgetown. This is the annual Project 44 game.
Yep.
Rake, I know you're familiar with certainly that, and the incredible life that Andrew Smith and now his wife, Samantha, continue to do for bone marrow transplants and just the recognition of what that meant for Andrew's life. I believe it provided a couple of extra months for him to live. So that is certainly an annual event there at Hinkle Fieldhouse. Always a great environment there. Butler and Georgetown, 2 o'clock. Shelvin Mack, the color announcer, coming up on FS1.
By the way, back to Purdue, what they have done other than, say, the SEC two-step of Texas A&M and Auburn is when they have thrown in, I don't even say a clunker, a road loss in Michigan by 2. It means you hardly played terrible. Michigan's a good team, too. But when they have been beaten, they have responded. That is the veteran nature of this team. Let's see if they can do that again tomorrow at Mackey.
We've got that mock bracket that the selection committee does this weekend.
Yep.
They've done this now for, 8-9 years where they, give us the early tease of the bracket. I would assume Purdue would be on the 2 line.
Purdue was on the 2 line before the loss to Michigan, and given the fact that, teams have been cannibalizing each other because so many of these teams have been, in the SEC or in the Big Ten, they tend to beat each other up and have losses. I don't think they will be penalized for losing at Michigan by a bucket. So I would assume they are still likely on the 2 line. Maybe they would drop down to the upper end of the 3 line.
Other items of note here on this Friday, the great Doug Boles is going to join us. We are 100 days out from the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500, and Doug Boles is at quite the week professionally. He will join us coming up at 9. Again, it's All-Star Weekend for the NBA. Just Pascal Siakam out in San Francisco. You will get Trace Jackson-Davis and Zach Edey, both on the same team, ironically enough, in the Rising Stars game. And, Rake, I know you've got a busy weekend, and we've got a busy weekend around the state. Hopefully, Mother Nature, hopefully we got it out of the way earlier in the week, especially for the northern part, girls regionals. And just a reminder, that is still 1 game.
Correct. So it is 4 teams go to 1 site. You play just 1 game. It may not be the 2 games in the same class. Oftentimes it is at the same site. Either it's a 1 o'clock and a 4 o'clock start or a 4 o'clock and a 7 o'clock start. From a local standpoint, Decatur Central has all of the teams kind of in this area from 4A that won last week, their sectional. So Pike, Lawrence North, Franklin Central, and Pendleton Heights all playing at Decatur Central tomorrow afternoon.
That is the voice of Greg Rakestraw. Kevin Bowen and Mark Dykton is with you, rounding out the week. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there. On the other side, what is the biggest positional need for the Colts in 2025? Among other things, we'll hit on that. And how do the NCAA tournament hopes look for the state of Indiana a month out from Selection Sunday? We'll touch on that coming up next. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Gosh, I should have had this blasting as I walked out the front door this morning. Just to wake up the whole house with this.
It's a great song. Great album.
It is. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there. Mark Dykton, I'm sure, will have us covered on the re-entries all morning long. And as I said, to lead off the show, there's no person in the world that I've spent more one-on-one communication with in the last month outside of my wife than the co-host here on this Friday morning. That would be Greg Straw. 5 hours in the car, there and back. Did you see Notre Dame sweat Boston College?
I did. And after watching that game in person, they had better sweep Boston College. Boston College had some really good bigs. And they had a couple of kids playing them like that. It has to be like a major donor's son, or like 4 or 5 guys got hurt and the walk-on is getting some serious run.
Hey, we will happily take a sweep with Brad Stevens in a Notre Dame shirt behind the bench
I
the other night.
believe that, when I said that, maybe Notre Dame could play their way into the NCAA tournament berth, narrator's voice, they have not played their way into the NCAA tournament.
They have
berth.
not.
I think that was their first win since I said that on the show about 3 weeks ago.
They host Louisville coming up this weekend. Indeed, the Irish do. Again, a busy weekend from a hoop standpoint. A lot of home games here across the state of Indiana. Speaking of the state of Indiana, part of your, I'm sure, probably more a social media experience on this Friday, we get the parade for the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia Public Schools closed for the day.
Uh-huh.
I love that. I brought this up earlier in the week, and you'd be a good person to ask, Ray. Do you know why we did the parade here in 06? I guess 07 it would have been, like the minute they landed?
Well, we didn't have any experience at doing that. We have not had the experience of doing that since. I also know that it was bitterly cold here, and that obviously shortened things and made the celebration exclusively inside of the RCA Dome. But I'm not sure we got that right, KB, and sadly in the gulp, 18 years since that happened, we haven't had the chance to have a redo on something like that.
Yeah, hell, I mean, we're just trying to host a home playoff game, I guess, un playoff game. But yeah, so what'd they do? They police escorted, the buses to like a general downtown area, then they hopped on floats and then did the float thing for a very short period of time and then into the dome?
Correct. And what I remember about like the aftermath of the Super Bowl is I was still in my daily talk show host days, which has been remarkably like 16 years ago at this point. I remember it was the easiest show we ever did the day after the Super Bowl. It was just 4 hours. We did not have a single guest. I did not have a co-host. It was 4 hours. I did the show from Coach's Tavern before a Pacers game, and I think that was right after the Artest trade. So it wasn't exactly, it was the start of the crater.
Yeah,
the next 4 or 5
sense.
years.
NBA trade deadlines, around that time.
For the Pacers at that point. I remember seeing Mike Dunleavy wandering aimlessly. So I guess it was not the Artest trade. I guess it was the Pacers Warriors trade that happened right around that time. I remember walking from, I did the show at the Rock Bottom, R.I.P. Rock Bottom, for the Colts for the AFC Championship day. I remember walking from there to the Dome for the championship game and seeing Mike Dunleavy, it's like snow, it's like flurrying a little bit. I remember seeing him kind of walk around like in front of the Conrad. I'm like, this poor bastard, is being lost, here in Indianapolis. But then 2 weeks later, I think there was a Pacers game downtown, so we were doing the show at Coach's Tavern. And literally I just opened the phone lines, and I just go, folks, this is the day you have dreamed about.
Sure.
We have a world champion to go Rob Dibble, the world champions of the world, the Indianapolis Colts. What was that like for you? How are you feeling today? Who do you wish could be celebrating this with you? And we had full phone lines for 4 hours.
That's awesome.
And what actually I also remember is that we had 3 or 4 Patriots fans call the show and go, hey, I'm happy for you guys, man. Congratulations. Obviously, they had won several.
Wow, I didn't know those people existed.
Exactly. After Deflategate, probably not so much. But we had a few. Hey, I'm so-and-so from Boston. Good on you guys. If you beat us 2 weeks ago, I'm glad that, you got the job done against the Bears. So
High Road Patriots fans.
I know.
Boy,
I found all 3 of them.
Nothing says love is in the air like that here on this Friday morning. So it is Eagles Parade Day here. Someone brought up, was it, the Pro Bowl? Because the Pro Bowl still existed back then. Whatever. The Colts had a handful of guys that needed to leave town for the Pro Bowl.
Trust me, nobody cared.
I don't know if that was the reason.
They don't now. They didn't then.
On that, if I had to say the biggest position of need Like, what is number one on the list for you? I mean, again, we are less than 2 weeks out from Combine Week. Combine Week a few years ago was where the DeForest Buckner trade really came to fruition for the Colts. We're less than a month away from free agency. The position that is the top need in 2025.
I think I'm going to go with what every mock draft has said for the Indianapolis Colts in the first round, and that is the obvious position of need, is the tight end position. Since the tight end production, not as run blockers, but as pass catchers, was historically bad for the Indianapolis Colts this year. So tight end.
What about safety?
That would be right behind it because obviously Julian Blackmon played hurt for the entirety of the season, and probably the Colts are going in a different direction. So if tight end is 1A, safety would be 1B or clearly spot number 2.
Yeah, and think about safety too, and you could say the same thing about tight end. There's just nothing from a depth standpoint. Like if I told you who are the Colts' backup safeties from last season, I don't even think they come to immediate mind for me. Like I struggle to think.
Well,
of the
Rodney
depth
Thomas
chart,
was still on the roster,
which again was like a surprise at times. I'm like, oh yeah, he still is playing for the Colts.
Trevor Denbo is listed as a safety, but as a special teams player. Ronnie Harrison was maybe the only surprise cut coming out of training camp, but then worked his way back onto the roster and was available. Am I missing anybody?
No, and I guess I bring that up to say this, Ray. Like, at center this year, you could go from Ryan Kelly to Tanner Bortolini.
Yeah.
At right tackle, is it Braden Smith handing the keys to Matt Gonzalez? At linebacker, is it EJ Speed handing it over to Jalen Carlisle, the rookie you just drafted? At safety, you don't have that. So,
correct.
Especially with Anthony Richardson's situation, it is probably tight end. But I think if for some reason you didn't have such a quarterback concern, I think you maybe would put safety atop that list because Lou Anarumo, when the defense has been humming in Cincinnati, he's had elite safety play.
Yeah, Jesse Bates.
And so I think that is something that you keep in mind. So, again, I tend to think there's not a ton of separation with a lot of these positional needs. I think you honestly could make an argument for corner. You could have that relatively high on the list. If you want to get specific, I think a pass-catching running back needs to be high on the list. Obviously, quarterback needs something.
A capable backup running back would be on the list, yes.
And then, you can make the case you're getting older at defensive tackle. That appears to be a really deep draft position, so maybe you opt for that avenue. But we'll start to get some answers on that. Again, Chris Bauer, Shane Steichen scheduled to meet the media coming up here in a little over a week down at the Combine.
Kevin, so much of what has driven the conversation has been going back to Chris's, annual postmortem / State of the Union in January. And now, when the Combine kicks in, you will get at least a fresh batch of that to kind of break down, have sound bites of, debate, discuss, etc. But again, it's really going to be that second week of March when free agency comes in to see, hey, we've got to do things differently. Hey, I made mistakes. Hey, we went this route. I should have gone that route.
Right.
We're going to find out in March, if that was just talking to be talking or if, that is actions backing up words.
Words become actions.
We'll see.
That's fitting on Valentine's Day, right?
If you guys had to guess, what would be the bigger name the Colts sign? At backup quarterback or backup running back?
It would be backup quarterback.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some interesting names on the running back field is why I asked that.
I think running back, you draft a dude in the middle rounds. He has a propensity to catch the ball out of the backfield, and that's the route that you go. I'm not a fan necessarily of making a huge splash in the backup running back market from a free agency standpoint, but that's how I would view it. I'm pretty sure they've only drafted one running back in like the last 4 drafts, and that was Evan Hall out of Northwestern.
And that was 5th round pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I that's probably the path that I would
And frankly,
go down.
he as the guy that has these stats at his fingertips for the preseason, Evan was the leading pass catcher in college football the year the Colts drafted him as a like 55 catches out of the backfield. And it just hadn't translated the last couple of years, and obviously injury played a factor in that too.
I think another question you would have, and Ray, brought up, obviously we're about to get some answers on this. Does the offseason look more like a splash or 2 or 8 signings where you jumped in the shallow end?
I would be of the opinion they need to have a couple of home runs versus 8 singles and doubles.
Because like Washington last offseason, they opted for 8 jumping in the shallow ends.
Right.
Nothing absurdly flashy, but enough to obviously, give them what they felt like they needed. Whereas you have some other teams, and, if you want to believe the Colts attempted a Daniil Hunter last year. They attempted a trade up into the top 10. Is it simply just, okay, those two get across the goal line this offseason, and that's what you do? Or is it quantity over high-end quality?
Hey, since it's Valentine's Day. Hey, sweetie, I almost got you a diamond ring. Here's dinner at Applebee's instead.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay?
I know you're not doing this, but don't hate on Applebee's.
I'm always up for eating good in the neighborhood, KB, just the first restaurant from a chain variety.
Chili's or Applebee's?
I celebrate the entire catalog, Kevin. Whatever one's going to be closer to the Rakestraw domicile or wherever my car might be taking me at that point in time, I'd be fine with that. But the reason I bring that up is, again, and this is going to sound kind of incongruent, because we all think the Colts have a lot of work to do, but I would also argue from a roster standpoint, it's having a couple of more impact players. I think there's a lot of guys that are solid.
Right.
I want a couple of more players that are spectacular.
Yeah, you need to influence the top 10 of your roster.
I do think you're an impact player on each side, defense or offense and defense, from being a very different team. So I am much more of the quality over quantity. I don't mind spending big on a couple of players. And I also think because of free agents that you are likely to let walk from your own end, and let's bring this up now, I don't know if Braden Smith's playing next year. And so if that's the case, there's cap space that all of a sudden frees up. And again, in theory, in Gonzalez, you have the guy that can try to spell him at right tackle. I think there's a little more cap space maybe than anticipated that the Colts might have.
That question, Braden Smith's future, is probably one of the bigger individual personnel questions this franchise has had in years.
Right.
He makes a lot of money. When healthy, he's a quality player.
Right.
He plays an important position. But on paper, you do have a third-round pick from last year,
correct,
who I thought played fine when he was asked to start, and he was asked to start a lot. If you are able to pass that torch, you now open up like $18 million, something like that, that you would spend elsewhere. You
right,
necessarily wouldn't spend it at that spot. So that one is a huge one, I think, on several levels. Obviously, that voice, Greg Rakestraw. He's with us here, co-host, and on this Friday, we usually talk to you, Rake, at 8 o'clock, and I have
normally you are my wake-up call, so I'm a little early today,
mm-hmm.
yes.
Well, now you just saw Mark Dykton's face earlier in this morning. I probably would have asked you this today, over under 1.5 men's basketball teams that will make the NCAA tournament.
I have constantly said over. I'm changing my position. Under. Purdue obviously is one. Again, as I said a couple of moments ago, there is a path there for Indiana. The Michigan State win has kind of opened the door. The obvious question for this group is, can you actually back up success? We said with Purdue, hey, every time they've been knocked down, they have quickly kind of gotten back up. For Indiana, it's been every time they have done something well, one step forward, 3.5 steps back, seemingly for this group. So can you back up your best win of the year by in front of your home fans that are dying for something to cheer about? Can you beat UCLA coming up later tonight at Assembly Hall? So Indiana would still be alive. And again, I think the best of the low to mid majors in terms of having a chance to win their conference championship would be Purdue-Fort Wayne. They just got smoked at Youngstown State on Wednesday night. So I would go with a single Indiana team in the Division I tournament.
I thought you might go 2 of all these Fridays just because what that win meant for Indiana. And again, to put that into a little bit of bubble terms, and let's just use Joe Lunardi as the example. I think people categorize him, maybe as most relevant from a name. I get there's other bracketologists that maybe are a little bit more successful, but Joe Lunardi, ESPN's bracketologist, he didn't have Indiana in the first 12 teams out before Tuesday night. Then they beat Michigan State. He bumped them all the way up to the 5th team out.
Correct, yeah. Right.
And now, what does Indiana get? They get a home quad 1 opportunity tonight They get a home quad one opportunity a week from Sunday against Purdue, and they have a couple of other quad one chances the rest of the season. Again, Rick, you have lived a mid-major life from not your life. I mean, it's a first-team All-American life. Let me be very clear on that.
It's a good chunk of my life has been lived in the mid-majority. I understand what you're saying.
Yes,
Thank you.
Again, you are the voice of a mid-major team. And even, like, not even a mid-major team. If you're a Big East team right now, if you're an ACC team, you would dream to get the opportunities that Indiana is getting on their schedule. And if you look at it, well, probably one more quad win, that might bump them all the way into the tournament. Now, they might be team 67 or 68, and as we unfortunately found out last year about Indiana State, when you get to mid-March, you probably want to be like team 62.
Right.
Because there's going to be a handful of bid stealers from around the conference tournament time. So it is just a quick reminder of what that win meant of, like, this could be Mike Davis's final year of Indiana makes the tournament. I'm not saying they'll win a game, but, like, again, they do have that opportunity schedule-wise to try and create real bubble energy.
So, Indiana currently, and this is not an automatic, they're the 57th best team. It's just one of the metrics that the selection committee uses. Indiana is rated 57th in the net rankings right now. I don't know if I said you're sandwiched between Drake and North Texas. Maybe you wouldn't think that's exactly in bubble territory. But to give you an example, they're not far behind Xavier, just ahead of Northwestern, Iowa, and USC in terms of Big Ten teams. Again, the biggest thing that Indiana has going for them, they do not have a loss outside of quad one teams. So literally their metric does not have a bad loss. Now, what you got to get to is they only have 3 wins in quad one. They have to get more. But when you play a Big Ten schedule, as you have alluded to, you get nothing but opportunities. And maybe the best example I can give you is this now. The SEC, as it is constructed, will get the most bids I think any league has ever gotten for the NCAA tournament. They're looking at 12 or 13 teams out of the SEC making the men's basketball field. Arkansas was last in the league going into their game against Kentucky a couple of weeks ago. They're now 41st in the net rankings. That's usually where you are getting an at-large bid. So, again, the opportunity is there. So, the math checks out for the Hoosiers, all right? But the eyeball test tells you they'll do something to screw this up because that is what this group has done through 25 games this season. But the opportunity is there for them.
Scott Dolson had a very specific kind of, hey, we need to hit these bullet points in finding the next football coach after Tom Allen. I think among those bullet points, it was a head coach that has won, didn't really care too much about necessarily the level, i.e. Kurt Cignetti at JMU. Preferably someone that has worked on the offense side of the ball, and particularly with quarterbacks.
Sure.
Kurt Cignetti's background had been that. A little bit of recruiting background was a desire as well. Kurt Cignetti was a recruiting coordinator for Nick Saban. Riley wanted me to ask you if you kind of had to lay out bullet points for Scott Dolson this time around on the hardwood, what would be your desired traits in the next head coach?
Well, again, you always in any hire tend to go opposite of what you have had. So, significant college basketball experience. You tried to go in a different direction, and it did not work. I think, and this is gonna sound bad, but you know, you open the show by talking about, hey, the zone, and we go, hey, what great innovation. In other words, being lack of innovation. Well, the last 2 coaches, we have all kind of said, hey, when's the next game? When's the next game plan change going to come? And you didn't see it much in the Archie Miller days. You didn't see it much in the Mike Woodson days. And maybe over the last 25 years, we've all said, this isn't the motion offense. We've been critical of like everybody's X's and O's. But, you know, having that X and O focus, you know, and be able to run kind of some unique and different stuff. You know, recruiting is always a major concern. But at the same time, you've got the ultimate inducement in recruiting these days. You've got a budget. You know, budget was not the problem in terms of adding, you know, to this Indiana roster, you know, during the course of the offseason. So that will help. So to me, it is college guy an X's and O's guy, again, recruiting, while always important, I almost think the Indiana brand will help take care of that.
I would agree on that last part. I am interested if Scott Dolson views like a Kurt Signetti type candidate. You brought up Drake. You know, people are obsessed with this.
Ben McCollum. Yep.
Ben McCollum right now,
Yep.
won at a historic level, the D2 ranks, first year in D1. You know, that type of hire is kind of what Indiana did football-wise. I think you almost eliminate that type of hire basketball-wise because I just think the pressure's different.
Right.
For the basketball job. And so I'm curious if like Dolson believes that as well. Of like, hey, we need someone that like has at least been in a little bit of a cooker.
Correct. And so Ben is a guy that in an earlier discussion I had this week has been brought up. And I almost want to say I want to give him at least one more year at Drake. Because and it is more rare that you are coaching somebody else's players now. Because often if coach leaves, player follows said coach to go to next school. Because sometimes in the old system, you would kind of be like, hey, this guy's winning, but he's not winning with his guys, the guys he recruited. Well, there is such roster turnover, it is different. But yes, Ben was a phenomenal coach at Northwest Missouri State at the Division II level. And very much the same things would say about Josh Schertz at Lincoln Memorial before he got the job at Indiana State. You would say those to an even more of a degree about Ben McCollum. I kind of want to give him one more year at Drake. The timing just may not be right. We may be a year from now saying, geez, should have hired that guy. Look at what he is doing. Or does he go from Drake after 1 year to somewhere else? But I would agree. I'd kind of like to see him at least have a little more sustained success at this level, at the Division I level, before I would hand him the keys to, again, what I think in the current conditions can be a top 5 to top 10 level job in Bloomington.
Speaking of Josh Schertz, 14-11 on the year with the Billikens. His second leading scorer, Goggle Man.
Of course he is. Larry Blurred.
Robbie, I always mispronounce his last name.
Avila.
Yep. Isaiah Swope, the third leading scorer for the Billikens.
That group was so fun to watch play.
That was great. Gosh, I loved it.
And again, McCollum and Schertz are X's and O's guys. Again, when a coach studies you and says, man, they run good stuff, that is the ultimate compliment of the coaching community. And other teams went to school on what Lincoln Memorial / Indiana State, Northwest Missouri State, now Drake, do from an offensive and defensive standpoint.
I feel like it was like this time last year we got that great like Indiana State Drake game.
You talking about during the regular season?
Yeah.
Around that time.
At the Holman Center, it was just an unbelievable atmosphere. Obviously, the Moval championship game was a great game.
Right. Just the wrong ending.
As well. Just the wrong ending, certainly. For that. So that is the voice. You know him quite well. That is Greg Rakestraw. We'll continue the conversation. Upcoming 8 o'clock hour reminder. Jeremiah Johnson going to join us 8:30 as the Pacers hit the All-Star break with a starting lineup change. And at 9 o'clock, a busy man who's been in the headlines this week. That would be one Doug Boles, the president of the Speedway, the president of IndyCar, the new president of IndyCar, going to join us coming up at 9. Thank you for spending this Valentine's Day morning with us. We will bring plenty of love in the final 2 hours. Kevin Bowen, Greg Rakestraw, Mark Dykton.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Well, 8 o'clock on a Friday typically means we have dialed up Greg Rakestraw. He joins us. We get his insight, tap into the encyclopedia for 8 to 10 minutes. But nothing says Valentine's Day like the love and the affection of Greg Rakestraw for 3 hours, and that's what we've got.
If I'm good for 3 hours loving on Valentine's Day, a good Valentine's Day has been had by all.
Boy, that is an understatement. Greg Rakestraw is with us here. Jeremiah Johnson, 8:30. Doug Boles at 9. I was going to ask you this. For some reason, I feel like I spaced and didn't ask you it last Friday. Obviously, I guess what now is about 2 weeks ago, kind of the shocking nature of the Luka Doncic trade. People are bringing up, hey, Andrew Luck retirement type of level shock and the craziness of it. Do you remember on a national scale how much of a shock it was, Brad Stevens to the Celtics?
It happened right before 4th of July. And so literally earlier that week.
Why the hell did it happen so late?
Good question. Literally that week, July 1st of 2013, was Butler's first official day in the Big East. We had the Butler radio rights for many years, including back then. I was all of 2 months into my tenure as the program director of this here radio station, and we did an event with Butler on the circle, like handing out signs and placards and swag about Butler being in the Big East. And Brad Stevens was on Monument Circle with us for part of this, doing this. And 3 days later, he was announced as the new head coach of the Boston Celtics. And I remember sitting in my living room because, we're going to be off. I think the 4th was like a Thursday that year. So I want to say that, it was like a 4-day weekend coming up, and you kind of unplug a little bit. So, of course, I leave the office a little early. John's on the air. I get a phone call from Tony Donahue at like 5 o'clock. Hey, can we get you on the show right now? Because at the time, I was the college beat writer for 1070thefan.com. Conrad Brunner was the Pacers and Colts writer for the Fans website.
Love me some Bruno.
And I go, we all do. And I go, oh, why is that? And he goes, Brad Stevens just got named as the head coach of the Boston Celtics. And I've got 2 minutes in my mind to go, okay, how do I speak intelligently about this? And it's one of those things where I just immediately go, well, it makes perfect sense. I never thought about it. But again, he had such of the right demeanor for that job. He was young enough to relate to the players, but did not have the outward ego to allow those guys to be the star. I'm like, it took 8 seconds for me to go, this is a perfect hire by the Boston Celtics. And this is going to significantly damage Butler because of what Brad has done. Now, what Chris Holtmann eventually did in that job was tremendous. And now we can look back on that and go, hey, Chris Holtmann did a hell of a job.
Yeah, he had him on the brink of that Sweet 16 against Notre Dame.
In terms of what he was able to do, in his 5 or 6 year tenure before moving on, to Ohio State and now DePaul. So, frankly, it got muted a little bit because of the 4th of July weekend.
Right.
And because just simply it was such a big deal locally, but I remember vividly how that played out.
So I was just checking. I kind of had forgotten this. Doc Rivers traded to the Clippers on June 25th.
There you go.
Because even from an NBA cycle, that is late. I mean,
that was right after the draft. Yes.
Yeah.
Right before free agency.
That happened June 25th.
Right.
Rivers traded to the Clippers,
and the Celtics
pick.
were rebuilding at that point in time. So maybe that's part of the reason why it was like, all right, if Coach Rivers wants to move, we can go get somebody, bring them in here, and rebuild this, which they obviously did very successfully.
And Brad Stevens still has a daughter in high school, is that right?
I believe that's the case.
Son's a freshman at Notre Dame, daughter still in high school?
Yes, I believe that's the case.
I probably just go to the Peegs.com message board, and they probably have the family tree ready of
sure.
Who they
Social
need to
security
contact.
numbers, home address, the whole 9 yards.
The whole nine. Fred asks this, if IU doesn't make the NCAA tournament and plays in the new Crown tournament, maybe fill our audience in on the new Crown tournament if you don't mind, which is my understanding that teams can't turn down. Would Mike Woodson coach in that, and how would that affect the search?
Well, it's a good point, and I was unaware of the fact that teams couldn't turn that down. But what the Crown is, That is the Fox Sports Postseason Tournament. And so what that is a partnership with the leagues in which they broadcast. So it's 16 teams. It's 1 week in Vegas. And it is Big East, Big Ten. I would assume, I'm trying to think of who else they maybe it's Big 12 that's part of that. But Big 12's not a Fox Sports partner. So
right.
I got to look it up a little bit more. I remember seeing kind of a logo flash by. But this is kind of as was proven in the NIT last year, again, Indiana State, while they didn't make the NCAA tournament, they got to host 3 games, and they got all of these major conference teams in their building or at Hinkle Fieldhouse. Well, we can't have that. So let's now have a major conference secondary tournament, and this is also Fox's way of having programming, before kind of the baseball season gets started. And so they're having their tournament with like special invitees. So I didn't know they could not turn that down. It would simply delay the announcement of who the next head coach is going to be. And because this head coach is stepping aside and largely stepping into retirement, I could easily see Indiana going forward with saying, here's our new head coach. And whether it's Mike still coaching the team if Indiana were to make that event, or whether it's one of his assistants coaching the teams on an interim basis, so be it. Because, again, you got to remember that these days, kids are going to go off to the portal. Or for this group, they will go on to kind of play professionally or graduate, run out of eligibility, whatever the case may be. So even if a team can't turn that down, then maybe you're having a team with 7 or 8 guys, out, playing in that event. I think it would just potentially delay whom that head coach was going to be. Fred, I would say this. I still think, the announcement is going to coincide with more of where the coach they are bringing in is coaching and how far his team is going to go in the NCAA tournament, more than Indiana potentially playing in a secondary event.
I think it would have no impact on the coaching search whatsoever.
No, again, but when you make the announcement last week, you will have all your ducks lined up and in a row to go at the beginning of the NCAA tournament.
And if you want to play the Brad Stevens flirt card for a week or two, you can do that.
Yep.
Because it's February 14th. And I don't say that because it's Valentine's Day. You can sit here and be patient with him, and then all of a sudden he tells you no for the 100th time.
Right.
And then you can move on, and you still have plenty of time. So, I didn't necessarily maybe see the major appeal to, making this decision in season. I'm usually like, what does an interim staff really do? But I guess in this case, Scott Dolson can get a head start, And
what I think it gets a head start on is figuring out, okay, who is our candidate going to be and what sort of buyout is going to be required to bring that person in so you get the financial side of things lined up.
Well, and I think you plant the seed rake into the rest of the basketball world.
Right.
Like a legit seed. And like no one out there is saying, well, I mean, he's still bringing in Trent Sisley next year, and what if they go on a Kevin Keats type run and he keeps his job? Like that pause could be there for some coaches. Whereas whether it was the coach on the sideline last Saturday inside of Assembly Hall or the coach that's on the sideline tonight inside of Assembly Hall, and Mick Cronin, they know. Like, no, that guy's not coming back. And if I have interest in it, then I start to just think about that. It keeps me up at night, and you can move on from there. Again, 8 o'clock tonight, Indiana and UCLA from Assembly Hall. I forgot we're kind of into college baseball season starting up this weekend.
That we are, not locally. But, yes, everybody, flying out to warmer climes to be able to try to play some college baseball. Yes, sir.
IU is ranked preseason top 25?
Yes, they are. Even with the influx of West Coast teams, they are ranked 3rd in the Big Ten. Oregon's really good for those who don't follow the sport. Obviously, USC and UCLA have had good teams in years gone by. But the Big Ten has been a league that has improved dramatically in baseball over the years. Frankly, the influx of Big Ten network money and television money over the last 20 years have played a big part in upping facilities and things of that nature. But I believe the Hoosiers are preseason number 3 in the Big Ten, which is a pretty good spot to be in.
Did you do that crazy 4A state title game last year, Mooresville and...
I did not, no.
Who was it? Mooresville and, boy, for some reason I'm thinking Lake Central.
Could be. I did the 2A. I did the 1A and 3A last year.
I bring that up because I saw the Big Ten freshman of the year is Hogan Denny
From Mooresville. Correct.
who
Yep. Really talented player.
He might have pitched that whole 4A game. I kind of a ton of pitch. I kind of forget exactly how the game played out. But I remember winning extras, and it was just a crazy one over there at Victory Field. Reminder: Jeremiah Johnson, 8:30. Doug Boles, 9 o'clock. Boy, I have no idea what type of Pacers team we're about to see when they come back from the break. I mean, that's been a hell of a roller coaster ride.
They've been just kind of hanging on by the skin of their teeth the last 6 games, have they not?
God,
and they've salvaged 3 wins
I was going to say.
out of that group. But you tend to get a free pass going into the All-Star break. You tend to go, all right, go get away for a week.
Yeah, they've been in a million time zones.
And especially with only having the one player involved in any way, shape, form, or fashion in terms of the All-Star festivities in Pascal Siakam. This is truly a reset. And again, this has to be, as we know, athletes at the top level seek for any shred of indignity directed at them for a level of motivation. The fact that Tyrese Halliburton is on the sidelines watching the All-Star game has to serve as major motivation for him to go from making the Olympic team to, as he so well put on Twitter, being the kid that still got an A in the class project and had nothing to do with it, and now to, you did not make the All-Star team. If that does not light a fire under his rear end for the last 25 games of the regular season, then I'm not sure what is going to. But at the same time, Kevin, if you told me when the season started, hey, the Pacers will go to the All-Star break as the 4th seed in the East, I would say, I'll sign up for that right now. Let's go.
For sure.
So big picture, this group is fine. What they did or did not do at the trade deadline, I absolutely agree with. I want to see this group get a run together in the postseason, and then you can analyze in the offseason. Even if that means that you lose Miles Turner for nothing after 10 years, I'm fine with that. I want to see this group together. So I'm willing to kind of give the Pacers, I want to say, hey, while it was a horrid start, job well done. You put yourself in the spot you needed to be in, going to the All-Star break. Go get away for 7 days, and let's resume, refire, and see if you can make up. I'm not sure they can catch anybody in front of them. They'll be playing good basketball going into the postseason.
I think the storyline when they reconvene coming up next week will be all about that 4 seed.
Right.
Because they're sitting there at 4. They're a game up on Milwaukee for the 5. Obviously, home court goes to the 4 seed. We saw last year what home court meant to this franchise, certainly. And you look at the Bucks right now. They beat you twice earlier this season. The Pacers will see Milwaukee here. I think it's in about a month.
And obviously a much different Milwaukee team now.
Sure. Twice in 4 games. So I think that is probably the biggest storyline for the Pacers here, just securing that 4 seed, because I also think you want to be the 4, as crazy as it sounds, maybe more than the 3 if you're trying to get greedy and get back to the finals. I'd rather play Cleveland in round 2 than play Boston.
Yeah. This is because Cleveland doesn't have that level of playoff experience.
Right.
Even though they are crushing teams right now.
Yeah.
But the Pacers do have a win, obviously, against the Cavaliers, without Tyrese Halliburton in the second half of that win against the Cavaliers as well.
And they won at Boston. I mean, that was one of the marquee, honestly, probably Halliburton's best game of the season.
Sure.
They should have, I don't know if they can do this, but I'm thinking of the Operation Board game. If Halliburton touches a basketball in the next 5 days, he should.
Right, yeah, just go get away.
Feel that buzzer.
Yeah, go get away. Like we should see, and again, sometimes I do things just to get a reaction on Mark Dykton. Like we should see Tyrese at SmackDown tonight.
Yep.
That would be he's not touching
so.
a basketball.
Where are we tonight?
I have no idea. Not in Indianapolis.
We were in Nashville, right? Right after Indy?
Sure. I tend to care about these things. Not that I have a life, but usually I'm doing something else.
Were you good with Jey Uso, or did you want Mr. Cena?
I was fine with Mr. Uso, and again, I can tell you much more about Memphis wrestling in the late '80s than I can about the current state of WWE.
So Tyrese Halliburton could be there because SmackDown is in Washington D.C. Weren't they just there?
No, he
needs
to be.
He could just stay.
To be
Kevin.
Yeah, there you
he
go.
needs
could
to be
just
in the
stay.
Caribbean. Stop that.
What are you talking about?
That man needs to be in warm weather.
SmackDown is his Caribbean.
Not touching any basketball.
They've got heat in those arenas. He's fine.
Whatsoever. I did want to sneak this in before, again, Jeremiah Johnson going to join us coming up at 8:30. Brett asked us, we were talking a little Colts in the 7 o'clock hour, Should Ballard move up a few spots to make sure they draft Tyler Warren? I've seen him going to the Saints on some mock drafts. Are you a fan of the trade up? For what it's worth, New Orleans has the 9th overall pick.
Right.
Colts sitting there at 14. Are you a Tyler Warren is that good, or are you it's a tight end? You can find it at other areas.
I am a Tyler Warren is that good. That is the obvious glaring need. Go get your guy if you have to get up to get him now. What I think in terms of the Saints at pick number 9, the question for them becomes, is there a quarterback available to you at pick number 9? Because obviously this is not a great quarterback draft, but somebody's going to be on the move to get Cam Ward, or somebody's going to be on the move to get Shedeur Sanders, because obviously the Saints are about to hit the reset button. So if you're a team like the Saints that is going to be younger and maybe not built to win this year, I would question, do they feel the need to go draft a tight end? So, but no, I would, again, I've seen this team go for singles and doubles and try to make small steps incrementally, and it hasn't worked as of late. I can hear the words of Chris Ballard during his January press conference of, I don't want to do something that will bankrupt the franchise or, kind of set us back or hamstring the franchise going forward. But no, I'm for less is more in terms of number of free agents, but make big swings. I'm for less is more even in terms of draft picks. Again, think about how many third-day draft picks last year made this team, Kevin. How many guys got cut that were third-day draft picks last year?
I think all 3. I think 3 or 4.
Right, which frankly is not exactly a great. It's not a great badge of honor for the scouting department. But at the same time, you could see that coming because of the number of your own free agents that you re-signed. I mean, what was the stat that we regurgitated more than anything else last August? This team could bring back all 22 starters from last year's opening game. That doesn't happen in the National Football League. Well, maybe we saw the reason why that doesn't happen in the National Football League. And so I am of the opinion of, hey, if you have to move up a couple of spots to get a guy you like, and that means you've got one less draft pick in this draft or maybe one less pick in next year's draft, I'm okay with that. To go get your guy.
And moving from 14 to 9, I don't think mortgages it.
No.
You give up a third and a fifth, something along those lines.
And guys that are football guys turn into freaking mathematicians like they work for NASA. Well, the value of this pick versus the value of this pick, and if I have the Pythagorean theorem that adds in here.
Jimmy Johnson's trade chart.
And the angle of the sun, screw that, okay? If there is a guy that you like and you think he fills an obvious position of need, and that means you give up an extra 4th rounder that same week and another 2nd or 3rd rounder the next year, go get your player.
And I think you can satisfy both. I think you can jump in the deep end and the shallow end. I think you can make the splash or two, but I also think by opening up some cap space, you still will have the ability to kind of single it out at a couple other positions to, whatever. Maybe you're more of a, band-aiding that, and maybe it's a full, whatever, cast on some other issues that you have. So we'll continue to keep an eye on
my preference would be go veteran to help your needs in the defensive secondary, because you've got a lot of young guys that are playing that you have relied on. Go get me some veterans at the safety or cornerback position. We can debate in terms of pass rush. Again, it's been by committee, and we all know that, other than Myles Garrett, pass rushers tend to not become available on a regular basis. We like what the team has in terms of the wide receiver position. We know who the quarterback is going to be, to start the year. You love what you have at running back. In other words, again, we all say this has to get better or massive changes are coming, yet it's this unique combination of, but it's not a whole lot of positions where I go, you got to fix that, you got to fix that. You have to have dudes. You have to have difference makers. To use the Rick Venturi terminology, go get some ambient. Go get some of those guys. Again, I am much more of find me 2 or 3 home run hitters. And I think that lifts everybody up around them on this team.
I don't think you have enough guys that make the other team
nervous,
sleepless.
Yep.
And that is, I think, an issue for you. That's obviously great. Greg Strom, Kevin Bowen, Jeremiah Johnson joining us in 10. Let's hit a morning check now.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Corteva Coliseum, March 10th and 11th.
Well, brace yourself. In about 12 hours, social media will be abuzz for the hot debate on the jerseys Indiana will wear tonight. These are Black History Month related jerseys that you will see. I can only imagine what the discourse will be on that. Can only imagine the discourse on Mick Cronin, potentially as the next IU coach, and when does IU go zone? Do they start the game in zone? Are they Boeheim with Syracuse? Do they opt to wait for zone? All questions we'll see answered tonight here, 8 o'clock in Bloomington. Rake, they are a 1.5-point underdog to UCLA.
I would say play zone in the pregame warm-ups. Fly your flag. Wear it proudly.
Martha comes out at the top of the 2-3 zone.
Absolutely. She's trapped by the 2-3 zone.
She's just mopping up the
It's
UCLA.
It's an aggressive start by the Indiana defense.
8 o'clock tonight, Robbie Hummel, Jason Benetti, of course, on our sister station, WIBC. Tomorrow, a couple afternoon home hoop games. It's a lot of home games around the state. Purdue against Wisconsin at 1 o'clock. They will be honoring, sadly, the late, but a hell of a player at Purdue, Biggie Swanigan, his family. They will be honoring him at that game. This is CBS, 1 o'clock for the Boilers. Certainly paramount that they get a home victory because they are at Michigan State coming up on Tuesday. And Butler for the second Saturday in a row. I believe it's their final Saturday afternoon game of the year. They have got Georgetown, as we mentioned in the opening hour. This is the Project 44 game. Certainly remembering the life of Andrew Smith and what him and his wife have meant for bone marrow awareness. So that will be a huge part of Hinkle Fieldhouse coming up on Saturday afternoon. All-Star Weekend's about all I got, Rake, in terms of other appointment items
and
here.
That will be not on my radar, to be blunt.
You do not care at all about these
Don't care, no.
8-man teams and Zach Edey and Trace Jackson-Davis on the same Rising Stars team?
Nope. Which is why I don't do this on a full-time basis, Kevin.
You know why I was disappointed to see yesterday. Last year I went to Saturday night at Lucas Oil Stadium, the All-Star, skills night.
And that's where it's a big deal. Okay?
Yeah, and this year they're not doing the item that I thought, or the event that I thought brought the most attention last year. That was Sabrina Ionescu and Steph Curry in that shootout.
Heard they were not running that back.
Yeah, they're not. I know the Caitlin Clark, headline of her not being in it. We had a couple weeks ago, but they announced that I think the other day. So that's a bummer. I thought with Steph, out there, you would get some sort of Steph Curry related event like that, and that was that might have been the loudest Lucas Oil Stadium was all night.
Well, again, what I'll say is this, is that All-Star games are for the average fan or for the casual fan, which I stopped being 30 years ago, given what I do for a living. But I also think that those All-Star games and All-Star weekends were large enough because you didn't have the access back then that you do now. I can see every highlight of every game. I can watch every game if I want to. I can find whatever my team is and watch them 82 times a season. Somebody screaming about cable television right now listening to this, but you can pay a fee to watch that game if you want to. Where I do think All-Star Weekend is phenomenal is when it comes to your city. And especially in our case last year, we had not had it for 39 years. It had not been in Indianapolis since 85. So last year, big deal. This year, I will find something else to watch.
Outside of my wife, no one I'd rather spend Valentine's Day with than Greg Rakestraw. We've got him for another 90 minutes. Jeremiah Johnson joins us next. Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I thought we were going to get a duet with this jam on Wednesday nights. Greg Rakestraw of the Pacers, scratch, claw, survive in the nation's capital. Obi Toppin, excellent. Benedict Mathurin, excellent. And as Jeremiah Johnson gets the ever stoic Benedict Mathurin in the post-game press conference, or post-game, I should say, interview right there on the court, this song is playing over the loudspeaker in, Capital One Arena maybe? And I thought for a second there we were going to get JJ and Benedict Mathurin singing it.
A melody pure and true. Take it, JJ.
I was caught off guard because, as Kevin mentioned, the normally stoic Benedict Mathurin, and I did not actually hear that coming from the arena speakers when he first started singing. I just noticed that he was singing a little tune, and I actually didn't quite hear what it was, but I took it as a cue that I think that's how we got to start this interview. Would you like to sing to the viewers? And so then he sang that, and then I've got an earpiece in, and so then I kind of heard it in the background. So I don't know. It reminded me of the tune that used to play at the RCA Dome back in the day when Peyton Manning's Colts would win a game and they would play Beautiful Day by U2. Maybe they're just so used to the losing at Capital One Arena. Maybe they do that every single loss, that, hey, they lost, but everything's going to be all right. But I did think it was fitting and appropriate from a Pacers perspective because people are a little concerned, I think, from the play in February, and they were probably concerned in the third quarter when they trailed by 19. But, hey, everything's going to be all right, and everything was all right, and now you go into the All-Star break with the 4 seed.
Not that I don't enjoy conversations with you, both on the air and off the air, but seriously, what are you doing talking to us? Like, go get away for a few days.
I know. I felt bad texting him yesterday, but I said I want to be respectful. If you have free time, certainly don't spend it with us. But he was like, yeah, I can do 8:30.
Well, the thing is, I know JJ's social life, I think, which is not much this time of year because of all the travel that he has. But frankly, when JJ and I talk this time of year, it's usually, hey, I've got the Zionsville Eagles. You're out of town, right? Here's a link to watch the game. So I immediately literally pull up the Zionsville schedule, and they are off until Tuesday. So please tell me you're getting out of town for like the next 3 or 4 days, right?
Well, not exactly. Nothing that exciting or entertaining. And two things. Because we did not go to Paris, even though we were in St. Louis, I guess I'm not as beat down by the travel
fair.
And everything that's been going on. And even when you think back to January where you had a couple breaks in the schedule, I don't know, maybe we're just used to it a little bit. I can remember the first couple of seasons on the road, I felt sort of crawling to the All-Star break, and then I really wanted to get away. I'm okay with the games resuming, but I'm okay with a little break as well. I'm not as fatigued as maybe you might assume, and much respect to Greg Shellhouse, Gainesville AD, but I don't appreciate no games the weekend that I'm off. I would have liked to have seen a couple of Zionsville games and not have to rely on the web stream. But I will catch
Tuesday
the rescheduled game next Tuesday against Brebeuf, so that'll fit into the schedule. And actually, the next 3 do fit where the Pacers are home but not playing. So I've missed a lot of games this season, but I'll catch the last 3 of the regular season. So. Other than that, just kind of resting up a little bit this weekend.
For those that don't know, JJ's son Preston plays in the JV, dresses on the varsity at Zionsville, and will be a future Eagle star the next
Fly, Eagles, fly, baby. It'll be 4 straight at home when the Pacers get started here. Coming up on Thursday with, again, I say the second half. It's more like the final third of the season. JJ, I did want to go back to Wednesday. Again, Toppin and Mathurin, outstanding. It doesn't take an idiot to acknowledge that. But I thought the Andrew Nembhard defense on Jordan Poole was so key. Late in regulation, late in overtime. And you mentioned a little interaction that some of the players had in referencing a first-team line to one Andrew Nembhard.
Even before he was named the Eastern Conference Defensive Player of the Month, which was an award that until Andrew Nembhard won it, I wasn't even sure that it was an award, and we did find out it's newly added this season. I've heard this first team shouted his direction different times during games, but it was fitting and appropriate as they needed one final stop to force regulation, and Jordan Poole was having some kind of game. And, again, you're okay at times with that shot with Jordan Poole, kind of a fadeaway three-pointer instead of attacking the basket. But still, I don't know if he wanted to attack the basket if Andrew Nembhard would have let him. And just to see first Benedict Mathurin with that emotion, give him a little bit of a chest bump and say first team, and then Tyrese Halliburton came from the other side of the huddle and said that as well. It's tough sometimes, and Miles Turner's mentioned this, for the Pacers to win some of those awards, but if you can start to lay the groundwork in February, even in January, and the team defensive numbers are what needs to continue to improve. They've fallen off a little bit the last couple of weeks, but a case will be able to be made for Andrew Nembhard for that. And again, you hope he's recognized first team, second team, whatever. At least that January recognition was appropriate, and I'm glad that everyone on that team understands what he means to that team defensively. Jordan Poole had a great game, but the two biggest plays were the end of regulation defensively, and then in overtime when the Pacers were about to lose that 9-point lead, he had to guard Poole coast to coast and just made it difficult, where he almost airballed the layup or didn't even come close on that attempt.
Every team needs a break at this time of year. Every player, frankly, every traveling broadcaster, anybody that travels with the team, period, needs a bit of a break this time of year. Is there a Pacers player or two that was most in need of the respite, reset, and recharge heading into next Thursday's game against Memphis?
Probably all of the above, but just a couple, come to mind. And during the broadcast, Quinn Buckner pointed out, and maybe he heard him, and maybe that was a challenge at halftime, but he said that Obi Toppin is ready for the All-Star break, because I don't think the last couple of weeks he'd been as good as he was in January. He's one of those guys that never misses any games. I think he missed 2 this season with ankle injuries. And then all of a sudden he responded in the second half. But the one that comes to mind immediately probably would be Pascal Siakam, because he's played every single game. He has been the most consistent Pacer. And I did think over the last maybe, week to 10 days, maybe was just kind of wearing out a little bit. And I don't think he'll overtax himself with the All-Star festivities. But just to have 8 to 9 days without real NBA action will probably be good for him. Anyone that's on, the vet side of the NBA, they probably appreciate the time off a little bit more than others. And so you have to first respect Pascal Siakam for his consistency. He was for sure the all-star of the first half of the season for the Pacers, but I think he'll probably be someone that will appreciate a little bit of time off. He probably won't have to practice that first day back next week as well. Sometimes the all-stars get that treatment. So if they practice on Tuesday, maybe he won't have to do as much, and then he'll get the legs going Wednesday, and I think he should be refreshed and energized on Thursday. But to your point, all of them will appreciate the break, and I think it'll be good, not just physically but mentally as well, to get them ready to go for the final stretch run.
He is Pacer sideline Jeremiah Johnson with us here, 30-23 at the break, 1 game up on Milwaukee for that 4th and final home spot in round 1. JJ, you sent me down a rabbit hole when you tweeted out as you were walking into Capital One Arena on Wednesday night about your memories of that arena dating back to Butler and Pittsburgh, round 2 of the tournaments. Talked about it with Brendan King a little bit yesterday. Rake, I'm sure you remember those first 2 games. JJ, I all of a sudden was 15 minutes deep on YouTube watching Butler Old Dominion highlights and Matt Howard's insane tip-in, and then all of the chaos that ensued of Butler-Pittsburgh round 2 of the tournament with Brad Stevens' glasses cracking me up.
Just an epic weekend, and really an epic 2 years. And just, you can bring up any one game during those what ended up being 12 NCAA tournament games for the Bulldogs. I was there for all of them. And when people ask me, highlights of my career, Super Bowls and obviously Pacers playoffs, but that 2-year run was something that you always appreciate, maybe the unexpected moments in games. And then again, too, you don't know what to expect when you go into a game. And to see that specific weekend in Washington, D.C., those 2 games end the way they did, when you consider that team, a week and a half before that was not even guaranteed to make the NCAA tournament. They had to probably win that Horizon League tournament just to really solidify that spot, and then they went in as an 8 or a 9 seed. And when you're an 8 or a 9, you kind of think you're packing your bags for one weekend, because in the second round you've got to play the number 1 seed. But that was a special team, and they were not thinking along those terms. And the way that game ended, YouTube is your friend. Go back and watch. Old Dominion was amazing, but the final 3 seconds or so of that Pitt game, I remember actually was sitting next to Ashley Adamson, who has gone on to great fame in broadcasting, and we just kind of kept looking at each other, and you kept putting your head down. You were breaking your pencil as you were trying to write down what happened because it just didn't make any sense. And to get out of there, I'll repeat the phrase that my dad shares with me every time the Pacers come from behind and get a win, and it was one of the Brad Stevens lines that he would go on and use in the following weekend in New Orleans. Believable, because everyone kept saying unbelievable when Butler would do something. And I remember specifically it was Jeff Goodman after they beat Florida. He looked at Brad. He said, unbelievable. And Brad, without even flinching, looked at him and said, I actually prefer believable. And it got to the point with everything Butler did in that 2-year run, you just believed it would happen. And so that's kind of the way you have to approach any situation. And so after the Pacers were down 19 and came back to win, my dad texted me believable the other night. So that's a fun story to share.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I know that ending, that Pittsburgh game. I mean, the Andrew Smith layup, the Matt Howard, or I guess I should say the Shelvin Mack foul, and, I mean, hands on your head, and then Matt Howard gets fouled 90 feet from the basket. Just epic. Epic. So thank you for those memories, JJ.
Yeah, always happy to share them. And I'm still waiting, and I talked to Matt Howard about this when I see him on the charity golf circuit. I say I'm waiting for the ESPN 30 for 30 on that 2-year run, because when did a team or a situation ever fit the phrase, what if I told you? And for that Butler run to go that way, I've still got a lot of behind-the-scenes archive footage if the producers ever want to put one of those together.
That sounds like a you and Greg Rakestraw project to me, does it not?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I'll
work
got
on that.
time in the summer. I don't know if Greg ever has time, but if we want to put something together, you know my number.
I will make time. We'll get that done.
JJ, you enjoy the quiet time here, All-Star Weekend. We appreciate the time, and we will certainly be watching coming up on Thursday.
All right. Always good talking with you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, buddy.
That's the great Jeremiah Johnson right there, Payless Liquors. Hotline today is an important day on the sports calendar, not just the love calendar. We'll explain more coming up on the other side. Kevin Bowen, Greg Rakestraw, Mark Dykton.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I only ask that you also play the 21, 22 years later version of this song at some point in time. Correct. From Beavis and Butthead Do America.
Mm-hmm. It's an all-time classic.
Yes,
right
it
there.
is.
Boy, honestly, if I might need to watch that tonight instead of
Sure.
UCLA.
Yeah, Maddie will be thrilled.
Yeah.
That's a love story.
Nothing says Valentine's Day like a little Beavis and
Got
Butthead.
the perfect Valentine's Day movie, Maddie.
Now, we mentioned this, and Doug Boles is going to join us here in 10. Obviously, it's been a busy week for Doug. He's taken on the title of not only certainly president of the Speedway, but also president of IndyCar. Rake, today we are 100 days away.
Yes, sir.
From the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500.
I am very much looking forward to the season. The season starts 2 weeks from Sunday.
Yes.
Down in St. Petersburg.
Correct. And again, we had Will Buxton, the new TV voice from Fox, on a few weeks ago. He was excellent. The energy was through the roof. He's a big name. I'm very much looking forward to not only, obviously, the greatest spectacle, but this year for IndyCar.
I celebrate the entire catalog. So, yes, the month of May is amazing. There is no sports day like it in the country. I am honored that I get to kind of be the last person on the radio talking about it every year, hosting the post-race show. I've now done that for a little more than a decade, and I don't plan on letting that go on these radio airwaves anytime soon. So, no, I'm looking forward to May, but of all the things that I watch that are not like on my beat, so to speak, I am watching every IndyCar race live, or I am DVRing every IndyCar race. I am that and an F1 nerd both.
You were deep into some Pacers trivia during the break. I want to make sure we get to that here in just a second. I was pretty proud of my answer effort on the Pacers trivia. But let's rewind to the 108th running. Your day looked like what? Because you were normally what, PA morning and post-race show?
Correct. So I am on, I do a split doubleheader every year for the race. So I am on the PA with Michael Young. I tell people I am the fourth Colts training camp quarterback that you know is not going to make the roster. If somebody's going to get cut, it's going to be me. So it's track dude Michael Young.
So you're like Jason Bean's little brother?
I'm Jack Cohn.
Okay, there you go. Very nice.
From years gone by.
Right. Uh-huh.
PJ Walker, perhaps. So let's see. It's Michael Young and I do the morning shift.
So do you start? Are you 6 a.m.?
I am the second voice you hear at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Michael gets the first dibs. I'm number 2. And then it is Alan Bestwick and Dave Calabro that then follow us, and they are the primary public address voices. Michael, of course, goes off and does turn 2 for the IndyCar Radio Network. I then go to the media area, go to the refurbished cafeteria, which has become the de facto fan studios, hang out for a couple hours, watch the race, and then talk about it. So this past race, the morning crew PA shift was normal. We did everything that we would normally do until 10:45. The veering of the schedule for the weather happened right after we handed the baton to Alan and Dave. Those guys were on PA for about the next 8 to 9 hours, and I'll bring this up with Doug next segment. I've always thought the best way to describe last year's 500 was passion and logistics. It showed the passion of race fans, and I was mesmerized when I walk out as they get to start kind of the pre-race festivities like about 3:30 or so last year. When you looked out to the stands,
it was unbelievable.
You wouldn't know that anybody left.
Yeah, it was
nobody left.
Mm-hmm. You would have thought the race started at whatever, 3:30 or 4 o'clock.
And so that's statement number 1. But again, the fact that Doug and his team had a plan, and I knew about it a little bit because of my job before the general public knew about what the plan was going to be. But like, here's our window. Here's how we get this all in. This is how it's going to fit. And like on the screws, got it, nailed it. So that last May was the passion and the ability to plan. Those are the things that will always stick with me from that race day. So to answer your question, I was on base from about 7:45 till about 10:40. And I was able to watch because of, the sun going down, seeing taillights. Nobody moved from the infield of the speedway until after 10 o'clock. So I'm like, we've got plenty of time to fill because we're not going anywhere. Those of us that were on the post-race show. So we wrapped at about 10:40 last year on the post-race show.
Boy, I still can't believe the drama that we seemingly now get annually on lap 200. It's like, do not take that for granted. I mean, it's amazing these finishes. I mean, hell, look at the Super Bowl. and what we just had from a drama entertainment value standpoint, and yet the 500 is delivered so often here in recent years. All right, you were deep into Pacers trivia. When you asked it, I was stunned. Give it to it.
All right, so thinking about this, because Miles Turner has lived 10 years of playing for the Indiana Pacers, always seemingly under scrutiny, and where could he be heading? Where is his next contract going to be? One of the tools that I use in terms of talking about the Pacers, I always pull up hoopshype.com and their salary page, because that way I kind of know what long-term plans are and things like that. I got to thinking, 10 years with one NBA franchise is pretty rarefied air. Well, it's very rarefied air for the Indiana Pacers in terms of numbers of games that Miles Turner has played for the team, or simple longevity with the team. So I asked the fellas during a break, I said, hey, you want to guess where Miles Turner ranks on the games played list for the Indiana Pacers? Kevin's first answer was 12. And I said, no, higher. Mark Dykton chimed in with 8. And I said, no, higher. Next answer was Kevin Bowen's correct 6. So now the question becomes, and these guys have already answered this as well, can you name the 5 players that have played more games with the Indiana Pacers, non-NBA, not ABA, just the NBA Pacers from 76 on? Can you name the guys that have played more games? Reggie Miller's pretty obvious.
I think 2 are obvious.
Reggie has played 522 more games than the next closest Pacer, which would be Rick Smits.
I think those are the 2 obvious ones.
Yep. The next 2 names that came off the board, actually, I think this one was first. Jeff Foster was here forever.
I went Feisty Foster.
764 career games.
What a legend.
Averaging 4.9 points per game. Very similar to Kevin's GPA at Cathedral High School. Dale Davis.
How many rebounds per game did Feisty Foster have?
1,000,000, 6.9. Dale Davis, 9.3 points and 9 rebounds a game. Dale Davis is 5th. I know where you live, Dale Davis. So who does that leave as the player that has played the 3rd most games?
Hey, shout out to Mark Dykton for this one.
In Indiana, the non-Indianapolis native got this one right. I assumed while we were having this conversation, he was thinking about the guys that played the most games in Chicago Bears history, and it completely checked us out. But no, he dropped in Vern Fleming. I want to say was here from 83 through 94. Has played the 3rd most games in Pacers history at 816. So as you're having that romantic dinner with your wife or your girlfriend, hopefully not both at the same time, and if you are, a hat tip to you this evening or this
that's
weekend.
A hell of a Valentine's Day.
Absolutely. Make sure you keep those straight if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You go, hey, sweetheart, I know you're thinking about our mutually shared love with each other, but did you know that Miles Turner has played the 6th most games in Pacers history? Boy, sweetheart, can you name the other like 5?
That. I would say
That's how it's done.
I want you to be my Vern Fleming. I want to be with you for a long time.
Yeah.
11 years. Let's go.
She's like, yeah, we go stand in Turner's block for the next 4 games.
Turner's block.
Thursday, Pacers back in action.
There's a pick and pop joke that keeps coming into my head, and I just don't know if I can explain it on the air. Just leave it like that.
Zach Edey in the building for that one. That was excellent, Rake. You were deep there into the Pacers trivia.
I was deep into something.
I was proud of the Feisty Foster.
Oh, you
Dale
should
Davis.
be.
So how far will Miles get? Can he pass anybody else anytime soon?
So Miles is 55 games back of Dale Davis. So obviously he'd have to come back for next year. Yeah. He would have to be here for probably 2 more years to pass Jeff Foster. He has 148 games back of Jeff Foster.
It is interesting. I feel like Turner will, we will have to wait a long, long time to have another Pacer get to Turner. I think in today's day of pro sports, the longevity nature of one player with one franchise is going to be extinct.
I will look this up because, as far as guys that have played double-digit years with the Indiana Pacers, it's not a lengthy list, and he is part of that list. This is year 10 for him with the Indiana Pacers.
We're sharing our memories. Last segment of the Butler-Pittsburgh NCAA tournament game with Jeremiah Johnson. Will Haskett chimed in here, said he watched Butler Pitt from a laptop while calling the D3 Women's Basketball Championship. He said he grabbed his analyst mid-broadcast on the crazy Howard foul. his analyst, Maria Taylor.
And Will and I are members of the same club. The next year, Maria and I did the Division II women's basketball quarterfinals at St. Mary's in Texas in San Antonio. As right as she was taking off from her career standpoint.
Ignited the careers of Maria Taylor.
She was able to break free of the shackles of working with people like Will Haskett and myself and has ascended to Sunday Night Football royalty.
100 days out, and we've got a new business card for our next guest, the great Doug Boles. He joins us next.
.93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
Well, we're 100 days out from the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500. And I also thought to myself during the break, I can't recall the last time I've handed someone my business card. Do you do that?
I do occasionally, just because I am, believe it or not, when I'm not in the broadcasting business, I am in the sales business. So I kind of have a little bit of a need for a business card. I've been out of them for like 2 years. I need to go get them. But in theory, I can use it, yes.
The company gave me business cards years ago, and they're incredibly outdated now. I literally use them just to drop them in to get like a free lunch maybe at Panera or something.
Well played.
Okay, very
Smart
nice.
move by
That's
you.
the only time I use them, really.
Well, our next guest is in need of some new business cards, a longer business card, if you will. Doug Boles, are you a business card individual?
It's funny you talk about business cards, and I have a box of business cards sitting that because I'll carry some occasionally. Like if I'm going, I know there's a big networking thing. I go, oh gosh, I got to take business cards, and I never give any out. And then normally now, if somebody hands me a business card, I say, hey, great, I'll email you later this evening with all my details, and that's how I do it. So I have a box of business cards. I just typically don't carry them. I have none on me right now.
He has added the title on the business card. Obviously, President of Speedway, Doug Boles, also the president of IndyCar. That announcement earlier this week. We are hair over 2 weeks away from that season beginning in St. Pete. Was this a goal of yours, Doug? A little bit of background, if you don't mind, on you adding this title.
Honestly, no. I think the current job that I had until 72 hours ago, I love the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I love the NTT IndyCar Series, but my focus has really solely been on how do we grow the Indy 500 and the events of the Speedway. At the same time, how do we use it to grow IndyCar? And I've been involved with IndyCar, obviously, my whole time, with the company, and more so really over the last 5 years since Roger bought the Speedway. But never thought that I would be working as an IndyCar employee, let alone the IndyCar president. So it was sort of a last minute thing, and I'm happy to take on the challenge and looking forward to the opportunities that we have there. A lot of work to do, and I've been the last 72 hours have been almost exclusively focused on IndyCar, and got a great team at IMS to keep the ball rolling there.
All right, now normally when you get a big promotion at work, sometimes there is a budget allocation, for wardrobe. Since you wear nothing but suits anyway, where's that budget money going, Doug?
So yeah, no budget code there to help me on my wardrobe. I will let you in on a little secret. So I wear the tie and the suit because, and really mostly the tie, because when they made me president, I thought I want to do something that really shows the respect I have for the event itself, the facility, but more importantly, the people who make such an effort to make that day, the Indy 500 day, so special to them. So I said, the brand deserves it. I'm going to wear a tie. I did tell staff on Tuesday in one of our staff meetings that likely at IndyCar races away from Indianapolis, you will not see me in a tie.
Whoa.
Breaking news.
There you go. So I will wear a tie in Indianapolis. I will probably wear a tie most of the time in the office. We'll see. But on the road, I thought, our fan base sort of gets it, right? They're like, yeah, there's that goofy guy with a tie, but you know why he wears it? Because he loves his place. It's harder to explain when you're in a different market and they have no idea what that means, and they just going, who's the goofy guy in the 90-degree weather in Florida wearing a suit and tie on pit lane? So I think I'll stick with my blue, but I just probably won't wear the tie.
All right, smart move by you. You're going to look sharp regardless, tie or not. Let's talk Super Bowl. And I'm sure you probably watched the game. You were more intent on those commercials. What was it like to see that, and just kind of your thoughts on the infancy of what appears to be? You went from one great deal to even better one, now partnering with Fox as your national television provider.
I wish, as soon as you started asking this question, I wish you could have seen my face. But the smile, every time the commercial came on, I think it ran 3 or 4 times throughout the day. One of the 3 commercials, I just lit up and looked at my wife and said, "Can you believe that there is a 30-second proper, fully produced Indy 500 related, NTT IndyCar Series related commercial on the Super Bowl broadcast, not just in Indiana, but nationally?" I don't know how to explain it other than it's sort of a game changer for us. The ability to really have that kind of promotion at that kind of level, have a TV partner that committed to helping us build some of those stars. It's really, I just can't describe it other than just, it's kind of like shock still that it's like, oh my gosh, and even last night during some of the Daytona stuff for the duels in Daytona, the IndyCar commercial there. It's like, this is proper marketing, and I'm really excited. Eric Shanks, who's the president of Fox, grew up in Brazil, Indiana, and has one of those mobile homes outside of turn 1 at the Speedway. And he and I talk all the time on the things that we're trying to do to grow it, and we're just so fortunate to have that kind of leader who's instilled that passion through his whole organization. I was out there a few months ago in the studio, and just really whether it was a camera guy or one of the operators or talent or whatever, they're all super excited about the NTT IndyCar Series and the 500.
I watched the Super Bowl, like 8 or 9 of my in-laws, and that was the loudest cheer that anybody had for a commercial when it got done. I was nervous it was because Joseph Newgarden was shirtless, and that was my wife standing up and cheering, but I think it was the genuine of like, wow, that commercial was awesome. And I had only seen the Pato one. The Newgarden one I thought was even better. I mean, the fact that you could incorporate Brady into that, excellent.
And I was going to say Joseph without a shirt on is a challenge for most of us.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think that Tom Brady kind of took the edge off that, right? Because if it had just been, but to have Tom Brady go, he's not that good looking. And it added a little humor to it, so those of us that don't have the Joseph Newgarden body could say, "See, that's all right, we're good."
Yeah, Rick and I are raising our hands here in studio. That's the voice of Doug Boles, the new president of IndyCar, along with, of course, president of the Speedway. He's with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. You said a lot of work, whatever has been done already for you last 72 hours in the IndyCar world. What are the areas of growth necessary?
Well, first of all, we talked a little bit about we have to really leverage that relationship with Fox. Not only their investment, but how do we invest alongside them? How are we really working on the promoter side of things? So for me, it's a lot of let's engage all our promoters that promote events outside of Indianapolis. So let's get them as excited as we are here in this community. Give them some tools to really get out and engage their communities and help grow the grassroots of the sport, because that's really the foundation of it as it goes forward. For me, a lot of it this week is just thinking through and sitting down with people and going, okay, what all do we need in race control to make sure we're ready to go? What all do we? What's the logistics for travel and just almost operational as much as sort of long-term vision right now is just making sure that the baseline is there for me as we go forward. But the number one thing is how do we just really leverage this great springboard that Fox has given us, and then making sure that the on-track product continues to be a really strong on-track product, and that our promoters are healthy and that our teams are healthy. So I'm going to leave for Sebring for the test we have Monday and Tuesday next week in Sebring, Florida. I'll go down there Sunday. I'm going to spend those 2 days really interacting with drivers and team managers and owners and just kind of letting them talk to me about some of the challenges that they face and things that they want us focused on. And we'll just start digging and one day at a time really is how we're going to approach it.
If I'm looking at the schedule correctly, I see some overlap. Brickyard weekend, I believe you guys IndyCar out at Laguna Seca. How will you balance some of the overlaps that are rather inevitable?
Well, from just an operational standpoint, we've made some adjustments inside the Speedway so that every single thing doesn't have to cross my desk. There's a lot of things that the team knows, okay, Doug will want to do this. This is the way Doug would do it, so they can keep moving forward. So I think a lot of that will help. Specific to Laguna, I already let Mark and Roger know that what my plan would be. I would go out the beginning of the Laguna weekend, so call it Thursday, and then either come back on that red eye Saturday night, because I need to be here for the Brickyard. NASCAR's a huge partner of ours. In fact, I was down at Daytona yesterday meeting with some of the NASCAR folks. So that's I'm going to have to not sleep a lot, take some red eyes, and do a little bit of juggling on travel, but we'll be able to work through it.
By the way, it wasn't exactly a red eye, but Doug did do his standard IMS flight over pick sometime around midnight or 1 a.m. last night.
Yeah, I think we landed a little bit before 2. Because I got in the house at 2:35 this morning, and then we were up and rolling again by 5:15. So.
Those are some May hours. I know the hours in which you keep, and now those extending in February. Doug Boles, our guest, again here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. The window to get the season in moves up a couple of weeks again because of Fox knowing their NFL commitments, and so you're on the job for all of 3 days. Now I'm asking you about expansion. Are you looking to maybe get into February? Do you have to still clear the Daytona 500? There have been talks about, international races that are non-points races that might extend into the NFL season. Obviously, you're set for this year. What does 2026 and beyond look like from a schedule standpoint for the series?
Well, I think we definitely need to look at the schedule opportunities. The challenge with going earlier is you just got to find places that are warm. So that limits really some of the venues that are real options for us. But definitely looking in that. I mean, it's no secret, Mexico City area is something we're focused on. That obviously be a warmer location. We have looked at other international races beyond, the U.S. and Canada and Mexico. But right now, it's I think the biggest one we have to figure out is there a way to race in Mexico at some point in time, and that'll be a big focus. But you can't go too much earlier, I don't think. You don't want to go head-to-head with the Super Bowl. You really don't want to go head-to-head with Daytona. And like I said, you got to find a place that's warm. And personally, I think it's hard to have events that aren't part of the schedule. So even those exhibition events that we've talked about, I think we got to really think those through before we make that decision.
Last one for me, the great Doug Boles with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Rake and I were reminiscing, Doug, about, last May and just what you were able to execute. And, Rake, I thought, put it very, very well of like the passion and the logistics that went in, the passion for the fan base and the logistics from your staff. 100 days out. I know we got a lot of events to cross off between now and then, but as you have looked back on last year's race, is there one or two kind of lasting memories that you have?
Well, the larger lasting memory I have, I think it's just two things from that race. So of all the races I've been to, and I've been to every one since 1977, but been involved from the team side or from the speedway side, I would say that race is the race I'm most proud of because I so love how resilient the staff was, from the full-time folks to the yellow shirts, the people that maybe work for us just one day a year to help us execute that event. But more than that, 163,000 people had already come through the gates when we asked them to leave when we knew the storm was coming. And for them to wait out that storm, and then for those folks that were on the other side to actually decide to come back and have 350,000 people in the grandstands was pretty cool.
Gosh, that is an amazing number when you put it in that realm. He is not one with business cards that he'll be passing out. I don't know if I'm going to be able to spot him in a suit. I saw the shop. Thank you to Brian here from the shop. Doug, have you seen these Doug Boles is my president shirt that's coming out on Monday?
I have seen that, and hopefully Brian loses a little money on that one. I'm not anxious to see those, but I love Brian and the shop. They do great work.
I think you'll be seeing a lot of those, especially on Carb Day coming up. Doug Boles, always enjoy our conversations. Congrats. Right. Beyond well-deserved.
Thanks,
safe travels, and thanks for the time on 3 hours of sleep.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Doug Boles, Payless Liquors Hotline.
As good at his job in sports as anyone. Simple as that. So IndyCar is obviously in good hands.
I said this earlier, Rake. He, maybe it was yesterday, he strikes an unbelievable balance of, like, the rich history that makes that the greatest spectacle, but also being open-minded to saying, where's our next generation and how do we get them in the building? I've used my sister-in-law as an analogy for this. She's been an infielder in recent years, and obviously she loves everything. She was 23, 24, 25 years old, right around that age. Of course she wants to be in the infield.
She's down with Dead Mouse?
Well, I don't know if she's necessarily all in on going all the way over there, but, like, she loves, waking up early and,
so she's not a snake pitter.
But, whatever. She and her friends are, like to throw them back early in the morning. I got zero judgment whatsoever of that. And then this past May, I sit with, her siblings and her dad, and she says to us, I want to sit with you guys this year. And, like,
that's how it's done.
That's how Doug Boles has envisioned this. And obviously not everybody in the infield is going to follow in her path, but, like, he has, from writing thank you letters to people that have been, whatever, season ticket holders or however you want to say it, race holders for X amount of decades, knocking on people's doors, saying thank you, to also making sure that he's open-minded about how do we get the next crop of 163,000 to be in here. Obviously, a bigger number than that. It's just it's special, and he doesn't lose sight of either of those sides, and they're equally as important.
And again, I'll go back to what I said leading into that question about Fox. I thought NBC was a wonderful partner for the IndyCar series. The Fox deal was even better. To have every race on Fox, to have every practice session, qualifying session on FS1, FS2. I know that those that are cord cutters, they're trying to work out, ways to be able to kind of see that from a streaming standpoint. You don't have to kind of give your cable login, for lack of a better term, for those practice session and qualifying events. But every Indy Next race is seen live. Again, it is, and the Super Bowl promotion alone.
Those commercials were
massive.
So good.
Massive.
So good. Speaking of so good, parade in Philadelphia about to commence for the Super Bowl. We have a picture of a funeral home in downtown Philadelphia, and the sign underneath the funeral home says R.I.P. Chiefs.
You would expect nothing less from Philadelphia, right?
How good is that?
Right.
Santa
is not getting booed today.
This is going to be a great social media Super Bowl parade. I can envision it.
Absolutely.
We're going to get some great images from there.
And probably video.
Oh, certainly.
The police. You might want to be tuned into the police scanner.
Speaking of throwing some back early in the day.
Certainly. Yeah,
it's going into a 3-day weekend and making today a 4-day weekend. Tell you what, the birth rates in Philadelphia mid-November are going to be off the charts.
Through the roof, to say the least. That's Greg Rakestraw. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there. I said it earlier in the show. I figure the only person I've talked to more one-on-one in the last month than my wife is probably Greg Rakestraw.
You may need to reevaluate some life choices if that's the case.
You were excellent behind the wheel, 2.5 hours up and back.
Steady Eddie.
From our trip to Notre Dame. I can still taste the old fashions we had.
Those were good old fashions.
Pre-game. They were excellent. What was the sandwich you had?
I got like a little Cuban sandwich, I think, didn't I? Or no, I got the Korean, the Korean chicken.
The new Korean place,
yeah,
right?
I have not done the new Korean fried chicken place in Broad Ripple yet.
I wanted to ask you this. We were talking a little bit. I don't know if you saw the quote from Dusty May's top assistant, Mike Boynton, the Michigan coach, earlier this week. He was at Oklahoma State for 7-8 years as the head coach, and he said that he thinks Braden Smith's the best point guard he's seen in college basketball, not named Steph Curry.
It's high praise.
And he listed Trae Young, Tyrese Halliburton, John Wall, a bunch that he's coached against.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, because I've asked Matt Painter this before, and I know COVID impeded some of this, but do you have recollection of your initial Braden Smith first game or two that maybe you called? Obviously, the sectional 8 experience his senior year is like what everybody remembers about how he kind of put Westfield on his back.
Playing on a broken foot, yeah.
Do you remember your first memories of watching Braden Smith?
So we had him win the Hall of Fame Classic, and it wasn't just points, but it was steals, rebounds, assists. It was everything. I mean this very much in a complimentary fashion. It's not going to sound that way. And you need this in your locker room, and if it comes from your best player and leader, that's even better. Dude had a case of red ass. In other words, if he was going to win and you were going to help him win, and if not, you don't worry about the coach chewing on you. The point guard was going to come get you. So leadership and intensity, not a problem for Braden Smith. That's what stands out to me from his days of playing at Westfield.
And then Fletcher Lawyer, he moved here, right? Like junior year of high school.
Right. He played 2 years in Homestead because, obviously his dad worked for the Pistons and has worked all throughout the NBA, but moved to Fort Wayne for his junior season of high school basketball.
Is that where Luke Goody went, Homestead?
God is correct. They were teammates together at Homestead.
I was going to say they definitely overlap then, yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Girls regionals this weekend, boys pairings coming up a week from Sunday. Are we looking at Fishers Jeffersonville? Is that like a foregone conclusion
not a foregone. Jeffersonville had a really good win on Wednesday night beating New Albany, and New Albany has another young, talented player getting ready to come through the program. And so they're going to have a run, I think, coming up in the next few years. But Jeff is really good.
Another Romeo?
Potentially. And
Where art thou?
I hate putting that label on somebody because that's very big shoes to fill. But there is hope that it is similar for the New Albany Bulldogs. No, the southern half is pretty wide open. The $1 million question for Ben Davis if and when Mark Zachary plays this season. Lawrence North, they've had a handful of losses, but because Stink Robinson's one of the best 5 players in the state, and they start 6'6", 6'7", 6'9", they're going to be a tough out in the southern half of the bracket. Jeffersonville is really good, and now that Trey Singleton is getting healthy, and they beat New Albany by 18 on Wednesday in front of a packed house at Jeff. Wrights has a very talented sophomore in the Mitchell kid. They could make a run coming from the south, so southern half of the bracket is wide open. And Fishers is the favorite up north. But, again, given how good their sectional is, kind of like LC and the girls.
Yeah, I mean, Westfield had them down the other night.
Right, Westfield, Noblesville. Unfortunately, Carmel's been through the ringer from an injury standpoint. I'll see Carmel on HSE tonight. Zionsville, kind of mid-pack, kind of like Carmel is. But the best challengers for Fishers would probably be Noblesville and Westfield in the sectional. I'm not sure if anybody from the Fort Wayne area would challenge them in 4A, depending on what their regional draw would be.
Anderson, potentially?
Anderson is in the southern half of the bracket.
Oh,
Anderson's
really?
in the same sectional as Greenfield Central. Anderson would actually come from the south.
God, that's a weird
geographic
draw.
Anderson is north of Fishers, but Fishers goes north in the bracket. Anderson comes south. And again, Anderson is kind of grouped in, and it makes sense geographically.
You got to get the Richmond in there.
With Pendleton Heights, Richmond, the Hancock County schools. So the dividing line is Hamilton-Marion County, goes up slightly into Madison County, and then drops south from there.
You know those tones. That is certainly Greg Rakestraw with us here. Valentine's Day abound. We'll continue the sports chatter, and let's hit a morning check down.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Corteva Coliseum, March 10th and 11th.
Boy, I can hear it now. Jason Benetti's going to have some wonderful Valentine's Day puns tonight. He will be on the call alongside of course, who else? Robbie Hummel. Fox, 8 o'clock, Indiana and UCLA. It is kind of wild that, like, right after Indiana and Mike Woodson make this announcement, the next two home games are against, like, two of the
Right.
bigger coaching candidates that they have. It was Dusty May last Saturday. I don't think it'll be the same reception for Mick Cronin, but nonetheless, I do think he's someone that IU fans have some curiosity about. Rake, UCLA has had a good year, but they haven't yet won in this neck of the woods. When I say that, I mean, like, here, Central Eastern Time Zone. They lost earlier this week to Illinois, but they are a 1.5-point favorite over Indiana. What a golden opportunity for Mike Woodson's bunch in relation to the bubble.
And as I said earlier, the path is there for Indiana to make the tournament without having to win the Big Ten tournament. Now, again, have they given us any sort of consistent results that tells you they can string it together? No, they have not. But the door has been opened by beating Michigan State on Tuesday night.
A little bit of downtime after this for Indiana. They've got nothing
9
next
days.
week. Yeah, they will host Purdue coming up a week from Sunday. All right, speaking of home games in the state, it'll be, I would say, a couple of emotional atmospheres in West Lafayette and at Hinkle coming up on Saturday. First, let's start with the Boilers. They host Wisconsin. Obviously, it's a huge game for the Big Ten. Wisconsin's kind of lurking in the Big Ten picture with just 4 losses. We should add, see if Purdue can bounce back. They go to Michigan State on Tuesday. They will honor Biggie Swanigan and everything that he did for that program and his family coming up on Saturday. So certainly one of the more beloved Boilers, especially of recent time. And then at Butler, it'll be the annual Project 44 game. I've been fortunate to be in the building for a couple of these in the past. Just awesome what Samantha Smith has done, and certainly the life of Andrew Smith and the awareness that she and the foundation continue to raise for bone marrow. Is excellent work that she's done. So that'll be 2 o'clock, Butler, Georgetown, FS1. Shelvin Mack will be the color analyst for that one. Anything on your end, Rake?
My schedule, Carmel HSE tonight. Tomorrow, girls regional game, Roncalli and Danville. All the girls regional games streamed free exclusively on ihsaatv.org. Same place you can see my handiwork if you want to take a break from your Daytona 500 watching on Sunday afternoon, or your NBA All-Star pregame, whatever that may be. 2 o'clock, I've got the girls' semi-state pairings, and I've got the wrestling state finals show coming up Sunday at 4.
Well, that sounds like a quiet weekend.
That is kind of a slow weekend for me.
Because you don't have Paul Casaro's Jags, do you?
They are off this weekend. They played on Wednesday, lost to the Oakland Golden Grizzlies of head coach Greg Campy.
Guy got him.
He did. And Greg's team is they lost 5 of their top 6 scorers off of last year's team. 3 to graduation. Jack Golke, the 15 Minutes of Fame
legend.
star, the guy that went from Hillsdale College to likely working for an accounting firm to now playing for the Wisconsin Herd in the G League. But then they had 2 players that were eligible to come back. One's at Arizona, one's at Washington. Trey Townsend is at Arizona, averaging like 9 points and 4 rebounds a game. He was the Horizon League Player of the Year a season ago. Oakland looked the part. They beat the Jags, I want to say 82-67. That game was closer than that for most of it, but Oakland did lead the entire second half. The Jags 8-19 with 4 games left to go in the season, and 2 of them at home, February 27th and March 1st.
When we had Greg Campy on at Horizon League Media Day, he said, how am I supposed to tell Trey Townsend to return when he's making more money than I am by transferring to Arizona?
Right.
Hard to argue.
Such is life, and that's also part of what makes Greg Campy such a good dude, is that he can acknowledge that.
Yes, indeed.
41 years as the head coach at Oakland University.
Legend, but indeed, that is life for a mid-major in today's world of college basketball. All right, a little bit more on the sports front. We'll close it out with a pop quiz in a bit. Greg Straw, Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton on this Valentine's Day Friday.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Immediately, the wedding singer comes to mind when you hear this song.
Yep.
Correct?
One of my favorite rom-coms.
Now, I feel like Centerfold is the iconic song of this band.
Probably.
Would that be the Jay Giles band that does
correct.
that song? Yes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mark, love was in the air for you yesterday when you saw the Jets make the announcement official.
Yeah, Valentine's Day came a bit early. Sports arousal is
Hey,
what
Ashley,
JMB calls.
I love you and everything, but boy, hearing Aaron Rodgers get the word no from the Jets.
On this day filled with love, here is some Dave Chappelle level hate. Directed
Oh, it broke
at
my
Aaron
heart.
Rodgers.
My favorite thing was the Jets' official Twitter account. Thank you for all the memories of 2 years. I'm like, what were these memories? Did I miss something? Him running out with the American flag was about it.
Did they
what else
show
were
the
you showing me?
Achilles rupturing?
Yeah.
Is that the memory?
The slow motion pop? Yeah, I don't recall what this was. Oh, thanks for holding our heads over a barrel and making us trade for Devontae Adams and then not winning a game.
I will say this, and
Good
obviously
times.
it's easy to do when the regime changes, but good for the Jets to eat it.
Right.
There are a lot of people that are just way too stubborn and don't want the financial, ugly black eye on their books, not to mention obviously the pocket hit of a $49 million dead cap. But Rake, I think we saw a team last year. By the way, Greg Rakestraw with us here on this Friday, Valentine's Day, very fitting. We look at the Denver Broncos. They ate it with Russell Wilson, and what happened?
Playoff team.
Boom.
I think Aaron Glenn's going to be really good as an NFL head coach,
Colts,
by the way.
Colts really liked him in the interview process.
Yep.
Really
I
liked
think he's
him.
doing a good job.
So yeah, I don't know if Bo Nix will pop into the old or fall into the Jets' lap, but nonetheless, wise decision. I thought Rodgers looked old as hell when the Colts played him last year.
And I think the future for Aaron, my guess would be he does not sign with the team in the offseason. He waits for an injury to kind of happen and for a team to be in need so he can kind of show up and have one kind of final run at a playoff spot would be my best guess.
Oh man,
Could be wrong about
I
that,
can hear
but-
the Hollywood script now.
He's not going to have a government job at that point? We sure about that?
That conversation goes across the hall, right? Is it not in the
believe
studio?
it.
Okay.
I'm just throwing it out there.
You guys want to take a guess at the home opener for the Eagles next year, our NFL opener? You guys got any bets on that?
Well, who would they possibly be playing?
Well,
who do they sync up with from a
so they sync
scheduling
up
standpoint?
with the AFC West, but the Chiefs game is on the road.
Okay.
So that wouldn't fall into it. They have the NFC North, and I kind of like Mark's Bears.
I could maybe.
No.
There are two sexy ones that I feel like could pop.
You don't think Caleb Williams
Do
and
they-
Ben Johnson is good
I-
enough for the
I
opener?
Do they
I could
host
see
the
that.
Lions?
They do. That is one of the sexy
There's
ones.
your answer right there.
The
I
other
think
one.
the Bears are more intriguing for the opener than the Lions.
Well, would you take Bears over Lions or Bears over Commanders? Because that's a repeat of the NFC Championship game, and you get a divisional matchup.
I don't
with
think they usually
Jalen
put the
Carter
divisional
in Illinois.
matchup in the opening.
I was
weekend.
gonna
I
say,
think
I
so
feel like
too.
they
I
haven't
think
done
you're
that
right.
There's
with
not a
the
hard and
Chiefs.
fast rule about that. It's just frowned
Yeah.
upon.
I mean, obviously, if you want Cowboys draw speaks for itself. But
Right.
I kind of like Eagles Bears. I mean, there's no team that will be talked about more in the offseason than the Bears. I mean, the hype on Ben Johnson is
Sure.
borderline Brad Stevens and Bloomington.
And the Bears won how many games last year?
Well, sure.
Don't remind me.
5?
Yeah.
Finished 5-12, right?
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
hype is just crazy.
Give me the sure thing. Give me the Lions.
Mark, you said we had a caller?
Yeah, Bobby wants to talk to you guys if you're willing to have him.
Of course we are.
Bobby, what's good?
Man, I have no idea what I've done to deserve this. Sunny skies, green lights, payday. I turn on the radio between post office, and who do I have? KB and my main man, Rake. What is up?
First of all, there are very few people that make my voice sound girlish. Bobby is one of them. But secondly, as I can tell you, Bobby and his lovely wife, Wendy, are salt of the earth people. Their lovely daughter, Grayson, is one of my daughter, Mia's best friends. Go to Broadway Middle School together. And so our kids were in preschool together. They had not been in the same classroom until this year. And it has been so cool to have them back in
I
our
love
lives.
that.
And I love the fact that our daughters hang out so much.
And not just that, they were standing next to each other doing choreography of their choir, the show choir.
Yep.
So it's all good. And the only thing that I like about it, man, is that it's like they never missed a beat.
No.
You know, it was like they were apart for so many years, and they just got right back together. And KB is a neighbor to my in-laws, so
Mhm.
I mean, it just keeps giving, man. But
Bobby,
I just
I'm trying to think. Was I like raking leaves? I was doing something out in the yard. All of a sudden, I heard your voice, and I felt like I looked up at the heavens, and God was talking to me.
Pretty much, yeah. That's it.
But yeah, like I told the screener, I don't have a take, but I just wanted to call in and say what's up to you guys.
I love it.
All right, hey, happy Valentine's Day and keep it legal.
There you go,
Bobby. Keep it legal. Happy
you know
Valentine's Day.
you're a heck of a caller when you've got your own catchphrase.
100%. I stopped into the post office. I guess this would have been just before Christmas. Maddie's like, "Hey, we need some stamps," and lo and behold, who's back there? It's Bobby. Gave him a little head nod. He came over. He chatted for a bit there. So, yeah, his in-laws are about half dozen houses down from me. Which, Rick, you know exactly where I live because you've picked me up a few times.
As Dale Davis would say,
to South Bend.
I know where you live.
Gosh, I'll never.
Are you too young to get that reference?
No.
Am I aging myself? Or?
No.
Okay.
I mean, Dale was. I mean, my first memory. Yeah, I'd say one of my first legit sport memories is Black Sox shaved heads, and that's probably a little bit further out. I mean, honestly, probably Aaron Bailey is my first real big sports.
So
memory.
January of '96. All right.
So I would have been 6.5.
Okay.
That's probably my first one.
My first sports memory is the Final Four of '82. So I would be 5-ish. And that Final Four was the pass to the wrong player, the pass to James Worthy from Freddie Brown of Georgetown back in '82.
Carolina, and who else?
And of course, so it was Georgetown, Carolina, Houston, and the University of Louisville. So that was the Final Four.
I'll never forget, Mark, this would have been last year's Notre Dame trip with Rake. We're, I don't know, we're passing Bennett Switch or, Miami, Ruth Riley, Miami, Indiana, somewhere.
Don't forget Little Mexico, the sign.
Yeah, certainly Little Mexico, or, the planes are going over Grisham. And all of a sudden, Rake wants to go with, I think it was 94, 95 Final Four teams. And you couldn't get the fourth team. And your audible scream when you heard the fourth team and you couldn't get it was one of the loudest things I've ever heard.
Does Mark have the dump button ready?
He would have needed that.
It rhymes with truck. I mean, yeah.
That was it. I'm trying to think. Was it Arkansas? Maybe
it was
the team?
Arkansas was the champs because Bill Clinton was there in '94. Talking about '94 or '95.
It was one of those years, and I feel like
so
it was a
Arkansas,
red team
Duke,
that you couldn't get.
Florida. And we're going to go through this again. I've forgotten who the fourth team was. '95 was UCLA and Ed O'Bannon winning. They beat Arkansas. Bryant, Big Country Reeves, and Oklahoma State was the another Final Four team that year. And now I'm blanking on the fourth team. I think that was played in the Kingdome in '95. So 94 was in the old Charlotte Coliseum.
94, the fourth Final Four team was Florida.
Florida was in there because Andrew DeClerc and the meat hook, Dimitri Hill.
Florida, Duke, Arkansas, Arizona.
It was Arizona.
Yeah,
Khalid Reeves.
That was the red team.
Yep. Arizona, who they took out, I believe, Louisville and maybe IU in the same. So IU got beat by Boston College that year, and Bill Curley at Miami Arena.
Speaking of Arizona, obviously he went to Arizona a few years after that, '94. Jason Gardner's kid's pretty good at basketball.
Really good. Good enough to have Jeff Rabjohns watching the game the last time I saw him.
Like his dad, like 5'11", scoring guard.
A little taller, kind of a combo guard. Effective three-point shooter, doesn't take it a lot. Again, that Fishers team is such a joy to watch. I have described it as a joy to watch, the devil to play, because they share the basketball so exceedingly well. I will see them Tuesday at Lawrence North on my Indy TV 23, and I would imagine that the Jack Kiefer Gymnasium is going to be full because, again, LN is one of the handful of teams that has a chance to beat Fishers this year. But Fishers, the best stat I can give you on them, other than they have lost once in the last 2 years, is the fact they average in a 32-minute game, they average 21 assists a game. They are so fun to watch.
Wow, that's
because of how they share the ball. Yeah.
And you said Ellen's got all the size around Stink Robinson?
Correct. So LN starts when Cam Webster's healthy, they start 5'9", 6'2", and again, Robinson, of all the skill sets he has, his ability to rebound as a guard is one of the things I think makes him Big East ready next year. But yep, Thomas, Miller, and McGrew, 6'6", 6'7", 6'9", and athletic of that group.
I think I have this right. I don't know if Kiefer started all four of them at the same time, but I think my senior year they could have gone with four guys at 6'9", Jeff Robinson, Dominique Ferguson, Stephen Van Treese, and Chris Reed.
Look at you.
I don't think Jack started all of them at the same time, but he might have.
That was a really good group that just kind of gets lost in the wash just because of how good the group was before them, because that's the immediate lineup
Right.
after a couple of guys named Oden and Conley. And I know that Stink is getting very close to passing Greg Oden to be the leading scorer in the history of Lawrence. Or that number is somewhere in the 1700s. And I would think that Stink is maybe a game or two away at this point.
Boy,
So
that's a pretty good-
I haven't seen them in about 3 weeks, so he's getting close.
That's a pretty good list of probably what the top 5,
Yeah,
top
there'll
7 looks like.
only be 3 NBA players
I was
that he
gonna
would
say.
pass as part of that
Yeah,
group.
there's quite a few Indiana All-Star
He's
jerseys.
already passed the late Eric Montross and Mike Conley Jr. and is yet to pass Greg Oden.
That is Greg Rakestraw. We'll do it one final time here. Love is in the air, Valentine's Day, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I'll say this. If Mark Dykton made a CD on the reentries today, you want to talk about a 9-month baby boom coming.
It is a love mix.
I didn't even put the Al Green on yet. I could have done Al Green.
Are you saving that for Greeny coming up at 10?
Maybe. Well, he's not on anymore.
His name's still on the billboard, though, apparently. Are you guys, speaking of, cross-promotional synergy in the Radio 1 family, will you be calling in for your love request to the JMB Takeover tomorrow night?
That sounds like a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I've already called my shot earlier this week as to what my song is going to be.
And that will be?
PM Dawn, I Might Die Without You.
I was thinking Robin with a Y, Show Me Love.
It's not bad.
You think
I
John,
go a little something slower.
You think John would get behind that?
I'm sure he would.
Maybe that's a 6 o'clock, not a
early. Tomorrow is the Quiet Storm edition of the program.
Yeah, lead into
it is
the magic
all about the love
and the romance. Those vocals you of course know as Greg Rakestraw. Rake will give away a $25 cluster truck gift card on the pop quiz, and it is Friday. That means Freebie Friday for the oil change. So a nice little pop quiz giveaway, a little double giveaway here on this Valentine's Day. Give us a call 317-239-1070. And you have not yet looked at the pop quiz?
Correct. So I was going to offer my services. We did this during Colts training camp, and it met with rousing approval.
Mm-hmm. Well, you offer your services on Valentine's Day, and that can go a lot of ways.
Yes, it can. I have not looked at the questions, so we will leave it to our lucky winner, whoever that may be. I can answer the question for you. I can be your phone a friend. If so, I will not look at the answers. But if you want to go solo, knowing, at worst, you're getting free dinner and a free oil change, then I'll happily play along as normal.
317-239-1070. Again, thank you to Cluster Truck. Thank you to Jiffy Lube for those prizes. Reminder, tonight, 8 o'clock, speaking of our sister station, that'll be WIBC. Coverage begins at 7. That is Indiana and UCLA. Boy, when you just say that out loud, it does kind of, I don't know, it stirs up some echoes for me.
It's a key men's soccer non-conference matchup between two of the best programs in the country.
Can you imagine that, as a regular season matchup in 78 or, I don't know, 81? Or...
Well, in 78 or 81, you'd have had to have gotten on Eastern Airlines and flown through St. Louis to Salt Lake and then to Los Angeles to get there.
I don't know.
So, no.
Could UCLA have done the double dip, play Notre Dame, and then slide down to play?
Well, it's insert the the comedy routine here, but like I think of the South Park example. Man's in a coma for 2 years and wakes up and finds out the Falcons are in the Super Bowl. What? What? Same thing.
Scotty, John Wood, and Bob Knight, ever?
Oh, yeah, we played each other, yeah.
73 Final Four?
Yeah.
And was that it? Or was there?
Well, their careers overlapped by 4 years.
I was going to say, didn't overlap a ton.
Because John retired for winning the 75 national championship. Bob became the head coach of the Hoosiers in 1971. So
that would have been it. All right, let's get a number, Rake. What do you got? 1 through 8 here for the pop quiz.
I was going to say 13, but how about 3?
13?
Well, thank you.
What are you trying to do to me?
I was up really early for my standards this morning.
Who we got, Mark?
Darnell.
Darnell!
How you guys doing?
Darnell, happy Valentine's Day.
With Greg Rakestraw,
right.
My good buddy Greg, and KB, and the talented Mark Dykton.
He is also a
thank you for
hashtag Midtowner like us. We're hitting all the famous radio callers with Bobby and Darnell on the program this morning.
Excellent. Darnell, a happy Valentine's Day to you. I would ask for your plans, but I don't know if we want to get too intimate on that.
I know Darnell well. If Darnell bought a new 90-inch television, he's going to sit there and watch that for the whole weekend.
90-inch television?
It's a wall.
Two wall TVs.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
I sold my 65s.
I'm pretty much like you have to be on a game show to see that big of a monitor.
Wow.
I'll be going out with a couple of friends for Valentine's Day. I think we're gonna meet at the Alley Cat today.
Ooh,
there you go.
That's a great spot. I love that.
Darnell's got a new Hall of Fame ring. He's showing off. Got the bling for Valentine's Day. He's good to go. I'm serious.
So Greg. I'm gonna probably use Greg as a lifeline.
All right, I will not look at the questions.
Even though I'm a sports junkie,
you are.
Hey,
KB, answer. Fire away.
Scanning this pop quiz, I think that was a smart idea, Darnell. Nothing against your intelligence, more because, boy, this is not a friendly Scotty Friday, to say the least. All right, let's begin here, Darnell. IU and UCLA again tonight. First meeting as Big Ten competitors. All told, this will be number 13 in the all-time meetings between the Hoosiers and Bruins. Who do you think leads the all-time series?
I would say IU.
I would lean towards Indiana as well.
You guys are veterans of this show. You guys know how Scotty J tends to work. A question like this, could he throw a wrinkle at you? Who leads the all-time series, Indiana, UCLA, or they're tied?
Darnell, when I go and play roulette, often people bet on black or red. I'm that nerd that bets on the zeros on the green. So perhaps, Darnell, they might be tied.
I'll just say tied. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Ray.
Number
say
2
tied.
here, Darnell. All-star break in the NBA. The Cavs and Thunder tied for the best record in the league, both at 44-10. Who's got the worst record in the NBA? Hornets, Pelicans, Wizards, Jazz.
Wizards.
Darnell
you
is
don't
right.
Even need him. He doesn't even need
No.
him. All right, and this day in 2010, the All-Star game was played before the largest crowd ever to attend a basketball game, right before they had another big event. Where did the 2010 NBA All-Star game take place? Was it A, the Alamo Dome, B, Reliant Stadium, C, Ford Field, or D, Cowboys Stadium?
The Alamo Dome.
You got the right state. Kevin gave you the clue in terms of before they had another big event. I would imagine, Darnell, it's Jerry's World.
Cowboy Stadium.
What if Darnell would have
damn act together?
What if he would have disagreed with you there? Would we have had to go back and forth a little bit on that?
Nah. Darnell and I are friends. I'd let him be wrong. It's okay.
All right, the field for Sunday's Daytona 500 is set. And Elio is in the field?
Yes, he's using the world-class driver provisional,
Okay.
which I earned in shuttling you to South Bend multiple times to watch Notre Dame games.
3 other drivers in the Daytona lineup have raced in the Indy 500. Which of the 3 has led the most laps in the Indy 500? Is it A, AJ Allmendinger, B, Jimmy Johnson, C, Kyle Busch, or D, Kyle Larson?
All my options gone with Rake.
No. Rake is good for all 5 questions here. Rake's the Energizer Bunny.
Rake, I know about racing, but I'm going to use Greg for this.
I got to go Dinger because I think he has run the most laps in the 500 of that group. I would go with AJ.
Scotty, is that stat correct? Elio has, and I say this only as a 4-time champion, he's only led the 18th most laps of all time.
Yeah, he's led his laps at the end of the race.
Man, that is wild. And one of the years where he probably led the most laps, he didn't win, right? 03? Okay, who holds the record for most career laps led at the Daytona 500, Darnell, without winning the race? Tony Stewart, Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, or Donnie Allison?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Scotty J. Let's just go with the last one.
With
Donnie Allison?
Think of a more recent driver. Donnie is the oldest of that group.
Okay.
Think of a more recent driver.
Give me the other 3 names again.
Tony Stewart, Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski. I can't help you on this one.
Okay, let's go Brad Keselowski.
Heartbreaker love, Rake. What are you choosing on this Friday?
You know, M&Ms make for a good gift for Valentine's Day.
Very good. I'm not sure if it'll land, but very good.
That's well done.
Yep.
Yeah, very good. There are a couple other areas that I was going to go, but I'll probably hold
Or
off
go practical with an interstate battery.
on that. Darnell, hell of an effort. No matter what, you're getting the Cluster Truck gift card and you're getting the Jiffy Lube oil change. That's frankly probably all that matters. Correct, 6-6 all time. Indiana, UCLA.
Sí, correcto.
The Wizards did win 3 to start the month, and they almost won 4 the other night, but they did not. Let's go! 9-45. That's, 3 games worse than anybody else in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Rake, you were all over the hint. Cowboys Stadium. Yeah! 108,000. Boy, that's a big old number. And you were all over number 4, too. AJ Allmendinger, 23 laps led.
So question number 5.
Larson was second with 4.
After one race. Who holds the record for most career laps led in the Daytona 500 without winning the race? Originally, Darnell said Donnie Allison. He's led 241.
Did you know this?
No. Brad Keselowski was his answer. Brad has led 222. Unfortunately for Darnell, or fortunately, if you're not a fan of his, The answer is not Darnell, but this guy. Kyle Busch has led 342 laps. So unfortunately, Darnell went 4 of 5.
Stay on the line, Darnell.
Yep.
This sounds weird. You want to touch it?
I want them to die like dogs. For the rest of you, piss off.
Gosh, I forgot about that.
What did I say that about?
That was about the Reds.
I don't remember, to be quite honest.
Reds opponents.
Sure, absolutely.
We wanted the Reds to make the playoffs, and that's how Rake wanted to treat everybody else in the NL Central, which I love, and I heavily endorse.
I play nice. I'm a competitive son of a gun, so that's not
Here,
surprising.
I do have the full context.
Good job, Darnell. Good to break bread with you yesterday morning, buddy.
Invitation for your league champion to play in our tournament and maybe make a monumental upset. For the rest of you, piss off.
So that sounds like it was a basketball related.
That's Indiana State, I think.
Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
I thought the Die Like Dogs was the Reds.
The Die Like Dogs was Reds. The piss off was about the basketball.
Yeah. So apparently I use that a lot.
Rick, I was thinking the other day, remember Ted Valentine was refereeing the Notre Dame game?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
I'm like, I can't believe Teddy V's still doing it.
And he looks skinnier than he did back in the day.
He looked great. He was talking to Digger pregame when we were up there for that. Ray, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thanks for the opportunity.
A very happy Valentine's Day to all of our listeners out there. Again, getting you set for this weekend. Not a ton on the calendar viewing. Tonight, it will be 8 o'clock down in Bloomington, Indiana, and UCLA. Tomorrow afternoon, it's Purdue at 1. It's Butler at 2. And then you got the All-Star game after that on Sunday, of course. And Rake, your weekend, a little boys action tonight, girls action tomorrow?
High school hoops tonight, girls basketball regional tomorrow afternoon, and then pairing shows on Sunday. The Saturday and Sunday events, ihsaatv.org.
Just a reminder, no shows for us on Monday with President's Day. We will be back on Tuesday. Everybody have a great, great weekend. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there. Thank you for spending it with us. Kevin Bowe and Greg Rakestraw, Mark Dykton.